Life goes on. A man become preeminent, he is expected to have enthusiasms. Enthusiasms. What are mine? What draws my admiration? What is that which gives me joy?
Dames.
Music. Baseball.
We're up. I'm going to just switch it up a little bit, and I'm going to shout out my sponsors because we have a new official sponsor. Well, actually, 3 official sponsors that are new. I just gave them a shout out on the last podcast, but I just want to shout out and thank fellow Delta Bravo team member Kevin Bednars, who he owns 3 different establishments in Virginia, and all 3 of his places have hopped on to become sponsors of the Mission Statements podcast. So if you're in the Virginia area, or if you're not and you're a maniac and you want to do Delta Bravo road trips and you pass through Virginia like I did, go check out one of these 3 spots or all 3 of them. I checked out 2 when I did my road trip. The first one, which I'll admit I haven't been there yet, but I will be there, is called the Ashburn Pub. And you follow them on Instagram at Ashburn Pub. And they are located at 44110 Ashburn Village Boulevard in Ashburn, Virginia. Then there's the Percival Pub. Follow them at the Percival Pub. It's a little tricky. It's the PURCELLVILLE Pub, the Percival Pub, and they are located at 745 East Main Street in Percival, Virginia. And his newest spot is called Percival Eats. Follow them on Instagram at Percival Eats, and they are literally like a few hundred feet from the pub, and they are located at 609 East Main Street, also in Percival, Virginia. So thank you, Kevin, for, all 3 of his places hopped on as sponsors, which is very cool. And all 3 of them are, in fact, Delta Bravo approved. And there are very, very limited, only a couple of stickers that are floating around where it's Delta Bravo approved for all 3 of his spots. So thanks again, Kevin. Kevin's a really good dude. He's the one that gave me a heads up about the pastor in Waco and all kinds of stuff like that. So thanks again, Kev. Also, Main Street Jukebox. Follow them on Instagram at Main Street Jukebox, MAINST Jukebox. They are at 606 Main Street in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. A lot of Main Street going on here, And then last but definitely not least, Dead Sled Coffee. Follow them on Instagram at Dead Sled Coffee. If you go to deadsledcoffee.com and you type in the promo code Delta Bravo, you will receive 20% off of your order. So without further ado, we're in double digits on the Mission Statements podcast with my man, Andrew Katz. Kind of like 2 in a row, but a little role reversal action happening there.
Yeah.
What's up, brother?
How you doing? I know I was saying before we hit record, I feel like I just saw you. Not only did we record last week,
3 hours.
Yeah, your epic tale of Austin to Brooklyn, and I just wanted to make sure you had a chance to be unfiltered. Not that you filter yourself, but I want to make sure you had a chance to be the guest, to share your story, because you're very generous with your time and shining a light on other people in this crew, in this group. And it just made sense. But
I
then not only
appreciate
did
it. It was a lot of fun, man. It
it
really
was
was. I had
fun.
a
Yeah,
good time.
I'm looking forward to listening to it back. But
Hmm.
uh, and then this morning, and I know this will drop in a couple weeks or
Yeah.
something, but this morning I listened to Danny Johnson's episode, and man, what a great guy. He kind of embodies the whole Delta Bravo
He
ethos.
does.
And I, what I also love about all of this is that we do kind of give each other props and nods here and there,
Of
because
course.
it's not competitive. Even like, I guess on a healthy level, like I'm always like, damn, I wish I got that one, or
Oh, I do that all the time.
yeah, yeah. But that's so healthy, right? And
It is.
he said a couple, like more than one thing in his episode that I really appreciated. And one was like, that we're always, we could all hit the same spot and we would all do it our own way. And he made a lot of really good observations about how much fun this is, and how it's free, and it's this thing anybody can do, and then we have this group of people online, and it's kind of free of all of the drama and all of the negativity that and you think you brought this up too, that comes with being on social media. And I love that it's this wide open thing that anybody can bring something kind of cool to it. And
Sure.
we've joked around about it a lot, about some of the things that we find that really get our clocks turning, or that we're like,
Sure.
oh gosh, I just saw this spot, and people are like, I couldn't care less.
Right.
But it doesn't matter, because if you're passionate about it and you're excited about being there, and you talked a lot about this with Danny too, is that feeling and that moment. And that's really the heart of what I love about it. That happened to me over the years, before I met Delta Bravo people, and I didn't know what to call it, or what we were or what that feeling was.
Yeah.
We made it tangible by posting and by making can you hear my dogs barking? There's all these my dogs.
Now, can you hear the fan that's behind me?
No. All
All
right.
right,
That's
good.
All right.
It was hot in my apartment all day, so I threw the air conditioner on and I threw the fan on to get the air conditioning in here too. So I was wondering if it sounds like
we
half
put
a
the dogs
factory.
away. Yeah, we tried to get it quiet, but they hear me make one noise on the table and they think it's someone at the door. So
Mhm.
anyway, I just love that we have this group that we've been able to sort of make it tangible.
Yeah.
And I don't really know what you call it, but it's a mind shift for me. Like whenever I go anywhere now, it's like, okay, what's interesting about this place?
Sure.
What can I find, and what can I share? And what story am I going to tell when I get back? Because like you and Danny have mentioned more than once, the picture and the mashup it's icing on the cake.
Right.
It's not the whole thing. Now I do spend a lot of time and care and try to make sure I get the right angle and all
Oh,
of that.
no, that goes without saying.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. But you can't tell the story. Like the whole story isn't in that picture. Like the real life situation that went and that's behind that. Yeah, I take time and I make sure it's, as good as I can possibly make it and all that. But the story isn't attached to that unless you verbalize it and try to explain what that feeling is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what I like is that when you go back and you've realized, I mean, even when you live in a town, like I live near DC in Maryland, and I can get up to New York pretty easily. It's about 3 hours away. But you came through a couple of weeks ago on your trip, and you hit spots that I had all lined up in DC. Like I've been waiting to do the Mr. T standing on the Lincoln Memorial steps.
Oh, really? I found that like on a whim, like in my wormhole of DC things. I'm like, that's kind of cool.
It is, of course. And so the other thing, I thought you did great things with the Handmaid's Tale pictures, and you were really humble about that. You're like, oh, it was a layup. But the thing is a lot of people, I always think about this when I'm in DC. Like I've been down there hundreds of times because we went there on field trips when I was a kid, and we can drive down and see the museums anytime. But most people can't, right? The rest of the country probably thinks of DC as maybe a place that they'll never get to, or there's not a whole lot, there might not be a reason for them to go there. So anyway, the Forrest Gump and the Handmaid's Tale and all the things that happened there. And I have a bunch of them that I want to go do down there. The Doors visited the Jefferson Memorial, and there's a really cool picture of Jimmy Stewart and Frank Capra at the Lincoln Memorial that was shot when he did Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. And it's a beautiful sort of outtake. It's not in the film because Frank Capra's in the photograph.
I like that stuff. I like those behind the scenes shots.
And you know it's authentic because there's a picture of Jimmy Stewart with the Washington Monument behind him, and there's pillars as if he's facing the Lincoln statue, and it looks like it might be fake, like the background might be a backdrop. So but the one with Capra is not. That's the real thing. So I love that stuff. And the reason I brought up the Mr. T one is to get all excited and amped up to do your podcast. I was watching a little bit of DC Cab a couple minutes ago. So.
Nice, yo! I haven't seen it in so long.
Yeah, and there's a really cool. If you ever want to come to DC and you give me a little bit of time, I can meet you. And if you care to do it, there's a restaurant called the Florida Avenue Grill. It's on Florida Avenue. It's I think 1100 Florida Avenue. And it's where they have all their cab meetings and all their discussions in the movie. And
dude, I would definitely do that, dude. That's just cool shit. Yeah,
it's exactly the same. I think they maybe painted the interior because it was like exposed brick, but they have these octagonal windows. And what's funny is that in the movie, it's like 1983 or something.
Yeah,
and a big parking lot next to it. And that's not there anymore. There's this sort of new modern building that's jammed right up next to the
worse.
And so the Florida Avenue Grill looks like this. It looks so out of place because it's between this high school, I think it's called Cordoza High School, and then this modern apartment building. But it's from DC Cab. And then
that's awesome.
I don't know how familiar you are with the movie, but there's the scene where there's the pimp guy who has all of the kids' attention.
Yes.
Mr. T, Uncle Samson, is all upset because he doesn't want them hanging around with him. That's all right on U Street, next to what used to be called the Bohemian Cavern. And it's all right there. Like it's pretty much the same thing, but it's much nicer down there now than it was. Of course.
I'll come down to DC. We'll do a mission in DC because there's a couple of spots that, first of all, the last time that I went there, when I did the Handmaid's Tale and I did the DC Cab and the Forrest Gump, I did a couple from an old 50s movie called The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Where
it's like aliens come and we think it's like when did you ever see it?
I think I have, yeah.
Well, yeah, they land, if people don't know, it's from like 1951, I think, or something really super early.
Yeah.
And the concept of it back then, to think about what it's like, is kind of crazy. Because if you think about it, it's the mid-50s, let's just say, movie's like 70 years old. You know what I mean? So there's flying saucers, aliens come, and as soon as it's kind of cool for the time, like this special effects and whatever, but it's flying over the Capitol and stuff, and it lands in right by the White House in a place called the Ellipse.
Yep.
And it's still there. There's a couple of shots in there that I want to get that I couldn't get, but like the whole concept, they land there, and then we bring out the military and stuff, and then one of the Martians come out and we shoot it, and the main Martian guy comes out and he doesn't hurt anybody, but laser beams come out of his eyes and he makes all of the weapons in the tanks disappear. And the whole thing is the aliens are coming here to warn us, like, yo, people, you need to stop your shit because you're going to kill each other because you're all ignorant. So it's kind of like the flip of the aliens aren't coming here to hurt us. They're actually coming here to smarten us up because we're all stupid. You know what I mean? But it was an awesome movie. And those were kind of like not right. Like there was one of like it's from the beginning when there's an officer looking up at the sky and he's in front of like the Ulysses S. Grant Memorial. So that was kind of different than everything at the Lincoln Memorial. But there's a couple from, I'm not sure exactly what buildings they are. We're kind of pressed for time and it was so hot. I had my daughter with me. I was dragging her around Washington, D.C.
Right.
So after a while, I got to give the kid a break. You know, I'll go all day. But there's like 4 or 5 shots from that movie in and around that area that I still need to get. And plus, there's so many other from DC that I can find that I would love to hit.
For sure. I mean, there's all of the punk stuff that Glenn Friedman took pictures of.
Oh yeah,
Minor Threat and Fugazi. And you know, if you move away from the mall, there's all kinds of history that's not sort of national history, but more like DC history.
Sure.
So I probably have only just seen the tip of the iceberg as far as DC goes, but that's something I can do any day, which is you know, it's nice to be able to run down there and do that. In fact, the other day I was just doing some research because, you know, you had just done the Dallas Kennedy assassination spot in Dealey Plaza, and I've been there, and it's one of my favorite places to visit, which is a really weird thing to say, but
I understand what you mean.
It's such a thick emotion when you're there. It's like, so like I wasn't even alive when that happened.
Me neither.
It's this like it's surreal. Like you really feel like you've time traveled or gone back in time, and you're able to like see it. Like I get up on the box that Zapruder was on, and you can see it from the exact same standpoint. But the other day I was just thinking that you know, there's only been a handful of presidents that have been assassinated, and one of them is James Garfield, the second president of the United States, the 20th president of the United States. And while we know what happened, where he was assassinated is no longer there. It was a train platform or inside of a train station, which is right where the National Gallery of Art is now, the west part of the National Gallery of Art. And I was sort of surprised that there's no marker, or there's nothing. And I think that they recently put a marker up, but it's only going to be temporary. But it's kind of it's right on the corner of, I think, Constitution and it might be 4th Street and Constitution Avenue. But
he's
anyway,
like the forgotten assassinated president, pretty much.
Yeah.
Lincoln and Kennedy, and you think the attempt on Reagan, but
right. And I've gotten that one too. That's
I know
either that, and they haven't changed the facade of that old Hilton at all. It's still like kind of looks like the 1970s.
Yeah.
But the Garfield thing is interesting because they put a marker that's sort of temporary, but I thought it would be, I thought they should do something more permanent, and they I guess initially they did, because it was this really big train station that's no longer there. And they had a star on the ground where he had been shot. He didn't die right away. In fact, they say he died because the initial doctors and examiners were poking and prodding the wound, and the germs from their hands are what ended up killing him.
My God.
Yeah, it's a really crazy story.
Yeah.
This guy just walked up and shot him, and I guess he got executed. I'm not sure what happened to the guy, but anyway, they had a star on the ground, like a big yellow star, and then they had this kind of I don't know, a marble plaque on the wall, and there's pictures of it. But they said when they knocked it down the train station, they lost all that stuff, which I think is so, you know, like that's where we come in. It's like, all right,
yeah, that's where we come in. Delta Bravo to the rescue here.
Yeah. Like Jimmy would have been in there with like his drywall saw.
You're damn right I would have been
rescuing it, right?
Yeah, man.
So anyway, there's, I guess since we last talked, I was on your Blast Furnace podcast a while back, and then I did have a really cool conversation with Rayanne Belcher from South Carolina, Nerd Rotations, and
I'm gonna get him on eventually as well. I have to.
Yeah, man, he's great. He's so supportive and encouraging, and he does sort of the live things, which are good, but it's kind of hard to find them once they're up. So
Right.
I like the format of it being on YouTube and
Sure.
and something you can put on Spotify. But what I did with him was I kind of recounted the beginning of my summer, and this summer for me has been bananas. And I didn't do what you did, where I didn't go specifically to do Delta Bravo locations, but
you went bananas overseas, dude.
Yeah. So, well, and it was all because we had a lot of runway. We knew what we were going to do this summer, and like a lot of people, our vacations and our plans started stacking up during COVID, where we had all these grand plans. Like my wife's cousin got married in Chicago, and we had our 20th wedding anniversary 2 years ago, and we didn't do anything because it was 2020 and nobody was doing anything. So we ended up planning to go to England, and we ended up attaching Paris to that. And we were gone for about a week. And but I knew we were going, so I just made crazy plans to hit as much as I could. And man, thank God for because you can really, and people have probably heard me say this, you can really plan things out. You drop your little pins, you build your map, and then it's there. And anytime you're anywhere, if you're out to dinner, or you're out to lunch, or you're just waking up in the morning, you're like, oh, I'm 3 blocks away from one of my little green flags.
Yeah, man.
And then, like you got your your phone full of pictures. I wish I was a little more organized with my pictures, but I did put all of my London photos in one album.
Right.
But it was so many that I was still having to scroll through to find the right one. But I'm
sorry, real quick. When I did the whole road trip, right, it was about 2 weeks before, I took all the pictures from each individual, because I just had road trip at first, and there was hundreds of pictures in there. And then when it came a little bit closer, I divided them up into their own separate folders. So I had like 45 different folders with like anywhere from 2 to like 50 pictures in each one of every spot.
I should have done that. It worked. My system worked, but you always get into this situation, and I think you brought it up on the Danny Johnson podcast, where you have the picture, you're in the right spot, and it's super sunny out, and you can't
see your phone. It's so annoying, dude.
Yeah. So you have to look for shade.
Yes, I was doing that in Dealey Plaza. I was so aggravated.
Yeah. And it's always like the hottest moment. You're like sweating. And
yes.
And then your family members like, "Can we go now? It's really hot."
I'm like, no, I can't. No, I have to cross. No, I'm way off. I have to cross the street, and then I'm across the street, and I still can't see. So I think I'm at the same spot. So I have to run 30 feet to go underneath some weird spot of a tree, and then I see. I'm like, all right, yeah, it's a whole thing, man.
So I wanted to say a few things. One, I feel like I'm kind of the nerd of the bunch. Like you're cool, and you have this great voice and great accent.
Yeah, but that's all just whatever. But I'm a nerd when it comes to this shit, dude.
And like Danny's hopping fences and
he's a maniac.
And so I'm more like, I don't know, like kind of nerdy and shy about it. So I feel like I've come a long way with kind of what I'm willing to do to prepare and kind of put myself out there. I listen to a lot of podcasts about being creative, and I'm a painter, and I'm an artist, and I'm an art teacher. So I'm always listening to people go, just put yourself out there. What's the worst that's going to happen? Ask for help, ask somebody for something. The worst thing they're going to do is say no.
Right.
And so I kind of try to tell myself that. So in preparing to go to London, I one of the coolest things I've ever done still is being a part of the In Search of Run DMC documentary that Nick Light directed. I just happened to be the person he followed around. I didn't make it. I was just in it. So it's my pride and joy, and Nick and I are still working on other things, and you've been involved in some of that, and it's still kind of moving along.
That's good. That was
Yeah.
a fun day, dude. That was a cool thing.
Yeah, yeah.
We're both very uncomfortable. Like we can talk like this, no problem. But when there's a third camera or a different camera on us and someone else is holding, it's weird, bro.
Well, that's what I wanted to segue to. So I got very excited about going to London because in my searches there were pictures that I absolutely wanted to find, and I had looked for them in the United States thinking they were in the US, and somewhere along the line I heard no, they're in London. And Fred Novoselsky, about a month before my trip, very coincidentally, he's the designer of the logo.
He made this logo. He does all the logos. He does a lot. I think he's an unsung dude in this whole thing. He creates the coins. He creates the logo. The official logos, he creates them all. Like
exactly.
Yeah, at Vector_IG on Instagram.
Is it
VectorSector.com.
Vector Sector, yeah.
Yes.
So Fred is salt of the earth as far as I'm concerned. There's a lot of guys in this group that are just really good people, and I think he's one of them. He just really randomly threw out, he's like, hey, do you know where this is? Which I love. I'm sure you love this too, when someone sends you a picture and you're like, all right.
Last night, Joe did that to me last night. He was like, sorry, so late Sunday night hip hop wormhole. I'm like, it's all good, dude.
And it's awesome. I love it, man. Then I obsess over it. So the good news for this one was I knew where it was. It was a picture of Bismarcky on the street with his medallion. It's a really famous picture of Bismarcky. Of course, he passed away last year. And a lot of people are sort of reminiscing and finding pictures and things like that. Well, the picture of him with the medallion is part of a group of photographs, and they were done by a photographer named David Corio. And when I was in London in 2019, which was the only other time I was there, I had found David Corio photographs of Public Enemy on their first trip to London ever in Hyde Park. And what's really cool is when you post it and you tag the photographer, and they affirm not only did you get the right spot, but they're impressed with what you did with it. And that's what David did. He's like, hey, like, that's the right spot. You found Public Enemy. You found where they were. That's exactly, it hasn't changed much. You nailed it. I'm like, oh, that's great. That's bonus too, that the photographer who took the picture is like blessing your work and also impressed at your legwork. So this time around, I found there was several pictures of Bismarcky on this corner in London. I didn't know where it was. And then I realized, oh, wait, this is part of a collection of photos. It was when the Cold Chillin' label sent their artists to London to promote the hip hop. And it's a subsidiary of Warner Music. So Cold Chillin', which I don't think exists anymore, sent MC Shan, Bismarcky, Big Daddy Kane, and Marley Marl. They sent them out and they were going to perform. And I guess there was break dancers too and all this. So anyway, they get there and they have to get their pictures taken for all of the magazines. And so they call up David Corio. This is 1987, 88. Yeah. And they said, can you take pictures of him for I guess it's NME magazine and others. And so anyway, pictures were taken. They're kind of iconic now. They're certainly the most iconic of Bismarcky. You see him, he's holding his medallion and he's holding his jacket open.
There's one where he's jumping
up in front of a BMW.
Yeah.
So I'm there, and I guess it was in April or May. I'm looking, and I find it. And I find it because there's a story of they left Warner Music. They went real close by and they took some pictures. So I found Warner Music, or what I thought was the right Warner Music, and I just spiraled out on Google Maps until I found what I thought was the building that's behind Bismarcky in the picture. And sure enough, I found it. And what it is it's a little footpath that connects Kensington High Street to Kensington Court. So I was like, I'm hitting that. I told my family, I'm like, I'm going to get up early one morning and I'm going to go hit it. And then for some reason, that voice went off in my head about ask ask people for help, like make connections, talk to people. The worst thing to do is say no. So I wrote a note to David Corio, the photographer. I said, hey, is there any chance you'd meet me on the street at the spot where you took the pictures of Cold Chillin' Crew? And I thought, I'm not going to hear back, or I'm going to hear
He
no.
might not even read it, yeah.
So later that day, he's like, okay, sure. And I was like, that's amazing.
That's awesome.
So we're going to be there on this day. Yeah. And so I was thrilled. I was just like, this is going to be very cool. So I told Nick Light, the director of the In Search of Run DMC, I said, I'm going to meet David Corio. I think if all goes well, I'll meet David. And he goes, okay, I'm going to ask him if he'll be on camera, and I'll send, we'll video, we'll contact some videographers, and I'm like, whoa, like, I don't want to scare him off,
He
doesn't know me. I don't want to show up and go, hi, I'm Andy, and have all these cameramen. That's weird.
Yeah, it's very weird.
And so Nick's like, just be polite and just ask him and see what he says. And I'm like, all right. So I said, hey, David, would you mind if we recorded the meeting? I'm guessing like 10 or 15 minutes, and we might have a cameraman there. Is that okay? And I crossed my fingers, and he's like, sure, no problem. I was like, this is what? This is kind of crazy. So long story short, I'll try to shorten it a little bit, but
that's fine. Go ahead, man.
I went, I'm in England. I got up early in the morning, and we agreed on a time to meet. I think we said 2:00 in the afternoon. I got there way too early, which is my MO. And I was like, oh, I'm too early. So what did I do? I walked another 2 miles and hit all these other spots, the Nirvana in front of the Dalmacia Hotel. And I found, what else did I find? Jimmy Page's house where he lives in London. And it was really cool. But then I got back, and I'm like, I'm tired and I'm jet lagged because we only just got there. And my blood sugar started dropping, and I'm like, oh, what have I done? And I couldn't have like the energy I needed, but I mustered the energy back up. I'm like, okay, well, it's almost 2. And so at 2:00, these two guys walk up, this one guy, Anton, and this other guy, Tim, and they have all this professional camera equipment. They're like, hey, are you Andy? And I said, yeah. I said, these are all the spots that I'm trying to hit. And I said, Nick contacted you? And they're like, yeah, Nick contacted us. I was like, how long have you known Nick? And they're like, oh, we don't know Nick. I'm like, well, how long have you known each other? And they're like, we don't know each other. I'm like, what's going on here?
Yeah, what's happening right now?
This is just how it's done, evidently, in the freelance world of contacting. I mean, Nick lives in Vancouver, Canada, and he contacted them, and they showed up right at 2:00. And then David showed up right at 2:00, and it all came together. They were so professional and so cool about it. It was amazing. They were really nice guys. They were interested in the project. And then because there were 2 of them, they had 2 different camera angles. And
that's awesome.
Yeah. So I thought this is going to be a 10-minute thing. I was a little embarrassed that all these people showed up for a 10-minute thing. So 2.5 hours later, we're still filming and we're talking.
Wow.
And David couldn't have been more of a gentleman, and just a wealth of stories. This guy he's part of all of this history. He's made his whole career taking pictures of reggae artists in Jamaica and a lot of different musical artists in the London area. I think he lived in New York for 16 years. So I did one of his Foo Fighters pictures in Lower Manhattan. Is one of his. He's been all over, and he's very humble about it too. I said, this is so cool. Like, how did you get started? And like, I know you're known for the Jamaican reggae pictures. And he's like, well, it used to be. He's like, I started when I went on tour with U2, and I was like, what? He's like, yeah. He's like, I slept on Adam Clayton's mother's couch a few times before those boys were famous. And I'm like, this is
man.
So he's crazy. And what was great is that not only does he have these stories, but he was super willing to share them.
That's awesome when you have a humble dude like that that's just willing to spill.
Exactly. And so we mic'd him up, and I had to do a couple of passes. So they're like, walk down the alley again, and we'll get you walking away and walk towards us and have that same conversation again and point a lot and things like that. So it's I am not made for that, but
Right.
I definitely enjoyed it. And it was such a cool experience that was kind of sandwiched in the middle of this family vacation. So at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock that evening, I got back to my family. I'm like, you wouldn't believe what just happened. I was with these three guys all day, and they were amazing, and they were all the cameramen were so professional about capturing everything. And when they were done, and we shook hands, and we got Instagram connected and that kind of thing. But it was all in a day's work for them, and
Wow.
Nick couldn't make it, so he just sent them, and it was fantastic. And
How a plan just comes together just like that, like it's meant to be, dude.
yeah, and so hopefully when Nick's going to kind of go through and edit it all, and it's probably going to be reduced down to like a 5 or 10 minute thing, but
That's fine.
It's going to be gold to me. Like it's this memory that I made through doing what we do, right?
Right.
Just talking to people and sharing what we're passionate about. And the other thing was, when I first got there early, I'm sure you can relate to this. I was there, I'm like 3,000 miles from home, and I got to Kensington High Street, and I'm like, this is the spot. This is where Biz Markie was. And there, right where I needed to be, was a giant produce truck that was making deliveries. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy's got to get out of here.
Yeah, it's bad. It happens.
Yeah.
I get aggravated because it's like, I'll say it out loud sometimes. I'll be like, of course, I'll be alone.
Yeah.
And like, for instance, Saturday afternoon, I'm at work, my lunch break. I take a walk 5 blocks from the job to get, we were just talking about like behind the scenes stuff. You've seen it. It's a picture of director of The Exorcist.
Yeah,
William Friedkin is in the middle of the street with this old ass camera, and he's filming the scenes where Karras is walking down the street and he walks to the building to visit his mother. There's nobody on the block. There's nobody on the block.
Yeah.
As soon as I get to the spot, there's 1,000 cars. There's somebody who's like a truck that's double parked. Now there's cars lined up. Everyone's honking. Everyone leaves. I'm standing there. I'm like, of course. It's like they all know that I need this shot. You know what I mean? It's like they all know that I'm going to be here.
Yeah,
So all of this is happening, and then they all clear out, and then there's some girl just lollygagging, walking her dog, and she's walking. I see her coming, so I wait. I wait until she walks past the building, and where does she stop? Dead center of the building. I'm like, it's like on purpose. I'm like, move with your dog. You were just walking from the far corner, walking like a normal person. You stop right where I need to take the picture, and you're standing there. It's hot out. Just keep. Why there? There's nothing there. It's like
the good news about the produce truck is that I got there so early that when I went for the walk and did the other spots, I came back and it was gone. So it was sort of perfect. And like you said, things just kind of come together sometimes. And that was such a good day. Like I sometimes I don't realize it was a great day until the end. That day, I'm like, I was in the moment all day. I'm like, this is really cool that this is happening. And I probably overdid it because I probably told those guys, I'm like, this is really amazing. This is really cool. I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe you're here. Can't believe you're filming this. I can't believe David is being so cool about all of this. So it was.
That's cool though. You didn't overdo it. You know what? Because you were in the moment and you genuinely appreciated it. See, I don't like take it back real quick. When I was in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre house, like they thanked us for visiting Texas. It's like, I can't thank you guys enough. Like I wanted to sit here and order a meal and eat, you know what I mean? But I didn't even do that because you're closed. But you gave us free roam for as long as we wanted in your business. And you're thanking me. It's like, I can't thank you enough, dude. You know,
it goes back to what you and Danny have been pointing out a lot. And that is, it's really the backstory. It's about the experience. I mean, Danny was talking about being at G-Sun Studios, and that's one of my bucket list spots for sure. In fact, when people ask me, what do you want to see in LA? That's usually the first thing. That and the Santa Monica spot where Yauk is up on the cinder block wall.
Yeah.
But yeah, to me, it's the story, and it's the thrill of the chase. And then when you've spent so much time researching a spot, and then it comes to fruition.
Yeah.
And so if I can stick with the England trip for a minute,
Sure.
a couple other things happened, and you can stop me if I've told this story on your podcast. I don't think I have, but
On the blast furnace one?
no, it hadn't happened then. So I guess
Oh, okay.
I probably haven't told this one to you. But one of the coolest stories, it wasn't my story, but I was looking up Bob Marley in London because I knew he lived there for a time. And so I looked up Bob Marley in London. I found where he lived and his blue plaque that they have on this, and that's cool, but that's kind of touristy. All of the blue plaques are neat, and I actually, that feels like Delta Bravo to me. It may as well be a little Delta Bravo plaque,
Right.
because it's saying, something cool happened here, somebody interesting lived here. So I love all that. But in my search, I stumbled upon this story of a guy named Keith Bow. I think it's Bow, Baugh. I think it's pronounced Bow.
Okay.
And so Keith Bow is an art teacher, and I'm an art teacher, but he was showcased on like local news in London a couple of years ago. And I watched the segment. It was, I think, 5 or 6 minute segment, and it was about his experience meeting Bob Marley, and when he was younger. And so in 1972, Keith Bow was a art teacher at this all boys school in Peckham, which is in South London, or South East London. And he went up to Kensington for a drink at a pub, and he was at this pub, and there were these 2 performers there. One of them was a guy named why am I blanking now? The guy who sings Johnny Nash. I Can See Clearly Now.
Sure.
And the other guy was the songwriter. His name was Bob Marley. And he meets these guys, and they're kind of like, I guess Johnny Nash was kind of making it, and he was becoming famous, but Bob Marley thought they were kind of stuck. And the way he told the story is he's like, how's it going? And they're like, it's not, we're not selling our records very much. And I think Bob Marley was famous in Jamaica at the time, but not anywhere else. And so he's like, why don't you guys come down to my school tomorrow and play for the boys? And I'm sure they'll buy your records. They all love music, and that would be kind of nice. And he didn't think too much of it. And the next day they did. They came down to the school and they performed. And it was so spontaneous. They didn't have a microphone. They didn't have an amplifier. They had a guitar, and they sang in front of the whole cafeteria full of boys, or auditorium full of boys. And you would think he was making this story up, except that he took 3 or 4 pictures. And this is where the Delta Bravo thing comes up. It's like, okay, I want to go to this spot.
Sure.
And in the segment on the news, he was showing people around what used to be the school. It's a community center now. And one of the coolest photos, there is when they're performing, and they had a conversation with the boys, and they're all wearing their kind of like their blue blazers and ties. And they asked Bob Marley to take his hat off, and he takes it off, and his dreadlocks fall. He talks about how it's part of his religion, and they sing a few songs. Keith takes a few pictures, and then they go out to the playground and they start kicking the soccer ball around with these 2 guys. So there's pictures of that too. And that's, so I hoofed it over there. Like, I took a bus, and I walked, and I was all by myself. I took the bus the wrong direction first.
Of course, I would too.
I only made it there, and it's all locked up. I couldn't get in. But I went around the back, and sure enough, there's the playground, and it's, it's 50 years later, full 50 years later, and taking pictures. And I'm like, this is just amazing. And I had sent out the same message to Keith Bow. I said, would you meet me? I'm going to be there. And he's like, I don't travel much right now. And he's like, but good luck. And he probably was like, who is this guy?
Of course.
Back, and I posted the pictures. He was all about it. He sent me articles about the same thing. He sent me a picture of himself with the photo he took on the playground, 50.
Wow.
So he got into it, and I think he knew I was for real. That I think I posted it 3 or 4 times on Facebook. I was so enamored of the story. I thought this is a beautiful story that
Yeah.
he met Bob Marley before he was famous, and he
Yeah.
met Johnny Nash right as he's becoming famous. And you could say maybe that's why they blew up eventually in London.
Maybe.
This connection. So
Yeah.
that was a fantastic day too. Just kind of running down that spot and kind of making that story, like connecting myself to that story, because it's not my story, but I
Right.
loved it.
Yeah.
One of my other favorites was, and maybe you saw this one. I had found these beautiful photos of Depeche Mode when they were just getting started. I think it was 1981, and the pictures were beautiful.
I heard this when you were live on Instagram and you told this, but please tell the story because it's awesome.
Yeah, so I forget the name of the photographer offhand. I think it was a friend of theirs, but the pictures look like they could have been taken yesterday. They're full color, they're really vibrant, except that it's these famous guys, Dave Gahan and the rest of the band, as kids, more or less.
Yeah, this is 1981 or something like that.
81, yeah. And I love the photos just on their own. And I thought, where is this? And I read and found out, oh, it's at Blackwing Studio. And Blackwing Studio was in an old abandoned converted church. They converted it to this recording studio. And I was like, well, there's no way it's still there, but I'll drop a pin and I'll find out. And I got on Google Maps and it looked the same, but I'm like, I don't know, I won't be able to get in.
Right.
I'll cross that bridge when I get there. And we literally crossed the bridge. We went across the river and we went to the Tate Modern Museum, which is a art museum, and that was really cool to be there. And of course, I looked at my map, and we're a 10-minute walk from that flag, that Blackwing Studio. And I said to my wife, I'm like, let's walk, these 10 minutes if you don't mind. And she's like, no, it's cool, we're close. And I said, and we walked, and it becomes really residential and also kind of beautiful in a like an old city way. It wasn't new and polished. It was kind of old, like little cottages and brick homes and cool like railroad bridges. And I passed this sign, and it says "Commit no nuisance," which was a public sign. I loved it. I'm like,
yeah,
for that, like that's a really cool sign. Every day, and I knew if once we made the turn, I was going to see whether or not we could get in, because that's where the churchyard was going to be. And as I made the turn, I see that the backdrop that I was expecting was identical to the pictures. It was just this wall of old brick townhomes that were, from the early 1900s or maybe 1800s.
Sure.
And I was like, oh, that's a good sign. I'm like, if this wrought iron gate is locked, I'm going to be really disappointed.
Yeah.
But there's going to be a gate and there's going to be a courtyard. And I turn the corner, it's all overgrown, and there's a gate and it's propped open with a sign that says, all are welcome. I was like,
wow.
That never happens, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah. So we walk in, and it's a beautiful day, and it's exactly the same. It's a courtyard it's all overgrown. And then there's a bulletin board, which my wife pointed out, and she's, look, here's the whole story. And it's a story of the church. It was bombed 2 times in World War II. It was, I guess, abandoned at that point. And then in the 1970s, they turned it into a recording studio.
Wow.
Even the story of Depeche Mode was on this. It was like typed up and put behind like this plexiglass.
Huh.
My wife sits down and she just lets me do my thing. And I'm hopping around. I'm like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same. And I had a whole bunch of pictures of them. They had done a photo shoot over the course of a day or two, and it was all over this courtyard. And there was an archway where they were sitting, and there was a brick wall they were sitting against. And I found the exact brick wall, made sure all the bricks were the right bricks.
Of course.
And, oh my God.
You ever count bricks on your phone and then go, okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Yeah, me too.
There's a wide one and a small one. And
yes. I've done it.
Hey, there's a little stain on that brick.
Yeah, I do it a lot.
and that's that's like the language, right? That's when you know you're in the right spot, and that's when it all fits. It's like you find the piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
And so I knew I was lining everything up, and then we kind of turned the corner and we found the archway, which is one of my favorite mashes I think I've ever done, because it's an old archway from, there was a facade there, or maybe even a room, and when it got bombed, I guess it got damaged.
Yeah.
But they're sitting in it in 1981, and they're posing like rock stars. And
Funny.
I matched it up, and it looks like, is it Martin Gore? It looks like he's kind of sitting in the overgrown part because of where I mashed it up.
Yeah.
It's really cool. And so I was like, this is beautiful. I want to go see the front door, because it's 1 Pepper Street is the name of the spot.
Okay. And this is in what part of London? Because I have no concept of what's where in London.
I guess it's considered South London. It's across the river, the Thames River.
Okay.
And it's Southwark. I don't know if it's pronounced Southwark, but that's what it looks like.
Okay.
So that's where it is. And we get to the front door, and the door is like this beautiful old kind of Gothic pointed doorway, heavy wooden, 200-year-old door.
Old church door. Yeah.
And there's a hand-painted sign that says 1 Pepper Street, All Hallows Church. And I was like, that's beautiful. So I'm taking pictures, and I'm about to try the door, and I'm like, I'm not going to just open the door. But I look around at my ankle height, and there's a hole in the door that looks like it's there for a vent. So it's probably like 10 inches around. And I was like, I'm going to put my phone in there and take some pictures, and then see what it looks like on the inside. So I was going to put my face up to the hole and look in, and I get down, I'm almost on my hands and knees, and I put my face up to the hole in the door, and the door opened.
Oh shit!
Someone was coming out, and I hopped up. I was like, oh my gosh! And the woman looks at me like, what's going on? And I was like, hey, I'm so sorry. I was like, is it open? Is the church open? She's like, oh no. She's like, we live here. These are apartments now. They kind of divvied it up, and she was so pleasant. I was surprised she was so pleasant. My wife is behind me, just shaking her head like, what have you gotten us into? And just kind of kept her distance and let me, stutter.
Explain yourself. Yeah.
But the woman that came out was so cool, and she was with this guy, and she's like, oh, it used to be a recording studio. I said, yeah, Depeche Mode. I said, that's why I'm here. And she's like, oh, that's great. She's like, well, it's not, there's no evidence of it ever being a recording studio. They kind of gutted it, and they turned it into these little apartments, and we live here now. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And so she was great. They walked away, and we walked away. But that was another time where in the moment, I was just so excited by kind of the end of the search, and it would have been such a bummer, I think, if it had been closed or locked, or changed, and none of it was. And I knew I had this sort of gold on my phone when I walked in. This is great.
Yeah, man. I know all of those feelings. It happened a lot on the road trip. It happens kind of often. Like, it's happened to me several times when you explain yourself, and people are super into it that they don't even realize it's a thing. Like today at work, I was talking with somebody. I was like, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. I haven't seen you in a while. They were like working from home, these people. And this guy, cool guy. And he's like, yeah, I did this whole crazy road trip. He's like, oh, what's up? Blah, blah, blah. So I started getting into it. And he was like, wow. He's like, dude, I had like, that's awesome. I'm showing him pictures of like, telling him about the whole Waco thing and this and that. He's just like blown away. He's like, I was like, yeah, I'm a different person when I'm not in this building. You know what I mean? Like when I'm at work, I'm here to work and do whatever. But even when I'm at work, it's like I'm just searching and researching. And whenever I have downtime, my lunch break, I'm doing these things. Like I said, last Saturday, it's a floating Saturday shift. Like every 6 weeks, we could work if we want to. It's just overtime money. So I was like, yeah, why not? So it was like lunchtime. So I'm like, you know what? It's like 5 blocks away. It's like I get my hair cut like on the same block. I've been there so many times. I'm like, why have I never gotten this? And it's like, I'm freaking. And there's a scene from The Exorcist, which is mostly, almost entirely filmed in DC, in Georgetown. but there is a spot on Roosevelt Island, a part of the Exorcist that was filmed, but it could be one of two separate spots. So I got to do a little bit more research. When Damien Karras goes and visits his mother in the old age home, Demi, why you do this to me, Demi? That whole part, is filmed in a hospital or a nursing home on Roosevelt Island, so which is in between Queens and Manhattan. So I got to take the little tramway and go and check that out. That's cool. I actually got a shot going over the tramway from that movie Nighthawks with Sylvester Stallone and Billy D. Williams. Nice. And there's a whole Rutger Hauer is holding people hostage on the Roosevelt Island tramway. So I'm watching the movie, and they redid the actual car. So I don't know exactly where in the car I'd be able to line anything up with from that movie. But on the outside, there's the helicopter that's watching this all happen. So as we're going, I'm just taking pictures as we're going across the river. And I finally got one. It lined up perfectly. The West Side Highway and some of the buildings and with the helicopter. So it's like above the water in the tram. Like wherever I go, I'm always looking for spots. Dude.
Well, yeah, if I can segue with that, I mean, that's exactly what happened to us the rest of the summer is that my daughter just started. In fact, we just dropped her off on Saturday at college, University of Pittsburgh. And
nice.
We went out there at the beginning of the summer. And I'm researching like, oh, Flashdance was filmed here, and so we got a picture of I think it's an art museum where she has her dance her tryout.
There's spots in Pittsburgh I need to hit bad, but go on.
So the exciting one for me though was directly across the street from the hotel we're staying at is this thing called the Soldiers and Sailors Memorial. And it's this beautiful building. It looks like something you'd see in DC. It's columns. It's all by itself on this kind of hill. It's very majestic, and it's there for soldiers and sailors. My father-in-law, I guess he took his test for the Vietnam War in there to see where he would be placed and all that. So. Really? What I didn't understand was that they'd filmed movies in there, and they filmed Silence of the Lambs in there.
Oh, yeah, you went bonkers with that, which was great, though.
Yeah, so the whole thing with I couldn't believe it because we pay a little bit of money to get in, and then I said I got to get upstairs. How do I get upstairs? And I said to the lady, I'm like, did they film Silence of the Lambs here? And she was kind of casually interested. She's like, yeah, they did. And I said, am I allowed to go up to the ballroom? And she's like, yeah, sure. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is good. So we take the elevator up, and she's like, I'm going to tell them you're coming up because they don't expect anybody up there. And there was some caterers or somebody cleaning up the room, and they're like, why are you here? I'm like, oh, I got permission. I'm supposed to be here. And then as soon as they left me alone, I'm like, this is where Hannibal Lecter was in the cage, where he disembowels that one guy. And it's an insane scene. And then, of course, he's in the elevator well, actually, he's not in the elevator. They think
that's where he bites the guy's face and then he starts beating him with the nightstick. That's a crazy scene.
So that all happened in this ballroom. And
so then, good.
Like when you first walk in there, even before you pay, you are in the lobby and you're like, oh, these columns are in the movie. It's the whole scene at the elevator when they're watching him come down in the elevator and they're getting all excited because they think he's in the box or on top of the box.
Right.
I couldn't make it match up. I'm like, why isn't it? I said, I know where the elevators are. This is not it. This is not the right spot. And then it struck me. I'm like, oh, they built it. They built the whole facade of the elevator so they could light it from inside. They could film it from inside. They could film it from above. And they just built the facade like just a piece of wood and some elevator doors. I'm like, that's brilliant. And that is the right spot. So when you start figuring things out, like how they did it, it's like, oh man, like that makes sense. And the same thing happened when we were in Chicago. So in the last month we were in London, Paris, we went to Chicago, we were in DC, we were in New York, and Pittsburgh. So it's just been this insane. I don't travel this much normally. And so every time it was like, all right, what's filmed here? What's going on here? And when we were just in Chicago for a wedding, and we were in the wedding, like we were part of it. We had responsibilities, and you probably would have loved this. And I know you probably know this story already, but I was following in Danny Johnson's footsteps. I'm like,
Yes.
I said, I dropped the pin where John Dillinger's death site is. I did some research. It's
The
at
alleyway.
the Biograph Theater, and it's on Lincoln Avenue, and it was nowhere really near where we were going to be, except for the wedding itself. The church was in that area.
Nice.
So we're all dressed up. It's the first suit I've bought in probably 30 years. I'm wearing a suit. We get an Uber, and for some reason, and I've never been to a wedding like this, where between the actual service and the reception, there was like a 3-hour block of time.
Okay.
And it was just, so the reception was down in the Loop, and it wasn't right next door, but we didn't need 3 hours. So I'm like, 3 hours. My wife, of all people, was like, you have time if you want to run over there. And I was like,
that's great.
It's like 95 degrees out, and I'm wearing a suit.
And you're running around taking shots of Dillinger's death scene in a suit? That's
well, she was like, you walk over there and we'll meet you. And I'm like, I don't think I should walk over there. I'll be so sweaty and disgusting. So she's like, well, why don't we just get the Uber, and we'll drop us off there, hop out, take your picture, and then we'll go down to the reception. I'm like, all right. And that's exactly what happened.
That's awesome.
The doctor was not all that pleased, but he stopped. I hopped out. I ran across the street wearing my suit, and I'm shooting all these pictures. I had all my angles all queued up. And sure enough, I was where Danny was, and I right before I went on the trip, I saw his picture, because he's sort of squatting down, like right where he got shot in the alley. It's a really cool story too.
Yeah.
And the other place that I didn't get to that you would probably really like is the St. Valentine's Day Massacre.
I would love that. Sure.
Yeah, now the building's not there anymore, but it's everybody knows where it was, and it's kind of like a courtyard or like a parking lot now, and you would be able to superimpose the building on there. And then there's a lot of vivid photos of inside the building of these people that had got mowed down.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to mention to you all is that there's a Chicago, I forget the name of the website. There's a Chicago entity that has made like a virtual reality overlay or an augmented reality overlay of that spot. So if you go there, you can kind of hold your phone up and it'll show you the front of the building where it was. And I want to play around with some of that myself, but they've done it, and they did it for historic locations in Chicago.
That's
awesome.
I'll
have to send it to you, because it's pretty cool, because there's some really good photos of crowds gathering. Even with the John Dillinger one, there's all these pictures of people like pointing to the blood stain and kind of gathered around. It was it was kind of like he was a rock star. And so
sure.
It wasn't as morbid as it is to have these dead bodies all over the city. People were caught up in it. They were sort of excited about it, I guess.
Did you tell your Untouchable story, the one with me?
No, and I'm glad you brought that up, because
those are great.
So I know, and I think you know it because I wrote it. I wrote some long-winded posts on Facebook.
I read it all.
Yeah, and I'm glad that I do, because I want to archive all of this stuff. But I did a lot of. I really believe wholeheartedly that the Untouchables is the perfect Delta Bravo entry. If anybody's at all interested in that movie and doing mashups and visiting spots, Chicago and the Untouchables is a great way to start, because it's all there and it's all really beautiful and it's all walkable. You can get everywhere in a day. One of the coolest buildings in Chicago is called the Chicago Cultural Center. It's free to get in. It opens at 10 a.m. You just walk in and you have access to the entire building. And it's where they filmed the Nitty chase scene. It's where he throws them off of the building.
Those are good mashes right there, where he's flying off the building. Yeah.
And then I didn't know that the courtroom scenes were also filmed there until I went there this time. And it's they blacked out the windows, and they built some backdrop walls, but it's in the right space. So I took way too many pictures there. I was so excited to match those up, and I did a lot there. Also Union Station, I haven't even dropped those mashups yet. I did it several years ago, but Union Station is where the baby carriage scene is, and you
Yes.
can spend all day there. It's a public place, and
Sure.
it's not a busy. It's not like Grand Central Station. It's not a busy place. There's very few people there. So
Really?
you talk about feeling like you're on a movie set. You are on a movie set, because a lot of movies have been filmed there, and it's beautiful, and it hasn't changed at all. Everything's exactly the same. But I think what you're asking about is I got all of these like sort of layups, these places where everybody can go. And the one that I wanted was when Al Capone, Robert De Niro as Al Capone, does the baseball bat scene where he's like
iconic, classic scene.
Yeah, the teamwork speech, right? Like, yeah, part of a team.
Uh-huh.
And it's a morbid scene. It's ghastly what he does. But I'm like, where was that? Because I found all these other spots, like him walking down the steps. That's at Roosevelt University, Union Station, baby carriage thing, cultural center is the courtroom. Where is the baseball bat scene? So I do some research, and it's in the Blackstone Hotel. Like Blackstone Hotel. All right, I look on the map. It's like a really fancy hotel. It's old and it's very expensive. And it's in the Crystal Ballroom at the Blackstone Hotel. I'm like, oh, how am I going to get in there?
Sounds like impervious. It sounds like you're not getting in there. Yeah.
So I walk down the street. It's probably another 10-minute walk from Roosevelt, which is as far south as I had been, Roosevelt University. So that's just Michigan Avenue. It's right next to the park. And so I walked another 10 minutes south. It's really not a bad walk at all. And I turn the corner. I think it's called Balbo Street or Balbo Avenue. And there's this beautiful hotel. And I see people kind of coming in and out. And I'm like, I'm not really dressed to go into a fancy hotel. And I see this woman come out who's dressed sort of more sloppily than I am.
Right.
And she gets in a cab, and the guys are helping her get in the cab. And I see a couple people get out, and they walk up the steps, and I just walk up right behind them. As if I'm part of the group,
right?
And then I'm like, I'll kind of get the lay of the land. I walk in, and it's just a really nice second floor lobby, really beautiful. And I just immediately sit down, like I've been there all day. I sit down, and I'm like looking at my phone, and I look. There's nobody notices that I'm there. And then I get up and I walk diagonally across a lobby, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go up these stairs. These stairs look important. And I walk up, and I'm upstairs on the third floor, and there's nothing there, and there's no ballroom. I'm like, man, I'm up here, but now when I come down, I'll look like I'm staying here. So I walk down, and I try to like
I get it. You gotta blend in, man. You look like you belong.
I walk down, and I'm like, I'll just go right to the elevator. And so I don't know if you you have stayed in hotels lately. But now, like usually when you have a key card, you need to press the key card again.
Yeah, you tap it in order for it to go up.
Yeah, so I'm like, that's going to be the end of the road for me. So I'm going to get in the elevator. I look, and sure enough, one of the buttons says Crystal Ballroom on it. I'm like, oh, wow. And then I'm like, I don't see any of those bumpers. I press the button, it lights up, and I'm off. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm going. So
yeah.
I'm like, what if like there's a wedding reception or something going on? So the doors open, and it's totally quiet on this floor. There's nobody. And I look to my left, and there's a double door, and that's the Crystal Ballroom. I'm like, all right, one more door.
Yeah.
The door,
the final boss.
And it doesn't move. And I'm like, oh, like the knob doesn't turn, and it won't open. And then I realize all I do is pull, and I pull, and the door opens, and I'm standing there, and I'm in the Crystal Ballroom, and all the tables are set for like a wedding or something. And I'm like, I was really nervous because so I just started taking pictures. I'm like, I better just do it and get out of here. I'm not going to talk to anybody. So I took a 10-second video, and I took some still shots, and I tried to remember. I didn't even bring up the pictures on my phone. I'm like, I'm just gonna get what I can and not push my luck.
Really? Yeah, you went kind of unprepared for class.
I mean, I had them on my phone, but I wasn't going to like spend time like trying to find them. So yeah, I did. I was like, I'm on borrowed time here, so I'll get what I can. And I was just thrilled. I was like, oh my gosh, this is the feeling, right? This is it. Like this
Yeah.
is where he did it. And I remember like I had one at kind of an angle and one straight on, and then I had this horrible feeling that I was facing the wrong direction because it's a symmetrical room. So I spun around and I took pictures facing the other way just to be sure.
Yeah.
And so I got it. I got back in the elevator. I went down. I walked out on the street. I helped the lady with her luggage because it was a whole bunch of steps. And I'm like, I'll help her with her luggage. And then I got out on the street and nobody even knew I was there.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah, I was all nervous for nothing. But if I had asked, they would have said no. They would have been like, no, you can't go upstairs. What are you, crazy?
Right. But you probably could have just taken your time a little bit. You probably
know.
But I get the moment where you're like, shit, I know I'm not supposed to be here. I'm gonna get kicked out. They might, I don't want to cause a problem. I get it.
Although, in hindsight, if someone had walked in like, what are you doing here? I would have absolutely done what we all do. And that's like, oh, do you realize what was filmed here? I'm here because of the baseball bat scene in Untouchables.
Right.
And then it's up to the person to either be like, you need to get the hell out of here, or, oh yeah, that is cool.
Yeah.
That happened at Roosevelt University because after COVID and all kinds of security reasons, you walk in and you go through a turnstile, and it's an old building. It's beautiful, but you go through a new turnstile and there's a security guard there. And he didn't care that I was there, but there was a guy behind the desk. In fact, I took the exact path that Elliot Ness takes or Kevin Costner takes. He walks up, he was like, Al Capone. And he goes, we have no Mr. Capone here. And then he sees him coming down the steps. Well, I went up to the same desk and I was like, oh, I said, hey, I said, do you mind if I take some pictures? And he goes, that's a negatory, sir. And I was like, what? And he's like, no, you can't take pictures in here. And I said, and it's a school. I kind of get it. And I said, can I just stand here and look around? And he's like, yeah, I guess so. And then with that, his superior, this woman walks over and he whispers something to her. And he goes, go ahead, take your pictures. I was like, awesome. So then I'm all over the place. I stayed in the same 10-foot radius. I didn't move around a lot, but I took a lot of pictures, and that's a great scene too, where he confronts Capone on the step.
Yeah.
And what's his name? Sean Connery comes up behind him and kind of pulls him away.
Yeah.
There's some giants right there. Costner and Connery.
Hell yeah, man. Anything that you capture with De Niro in this scene right there is like, come on.
And I had done that same spot in 2019 and I botched it. The angle I couldn't get, because it was hard anyway, even with the new pictures, but the way the railing comes down, and I think De Palma used like these wide angle lenses, and it was frustrating to try to, with my camera phone, line everything up and then mash it together when I got home, because he must have used some kind of wide angle movie lens for a different format. And it's great, but it's really hard to match it up afterwards.
I just had that same problem yesterday. You know about my problem.
With the biggie ones?
Yes.
Yeah.
The one with the tombstones came out okay. It's a little bit weird because of the blur effect that he used.
Looks great. No, but that's what's cool. Like
I black and whited it on purpose too.
Yeah, because you almost matched it up too well, because it doesn't look like two pictures. It looks.
I know. But then there's the other one where there's the big statue and he has his hand on the big tombstone. That's a very weird, because in person, in the picture, it looks like that big monument is like right behind him.
Yeah. Oh,
but it's just not. There's like 8 feet and then a pathway and then like 6 feet and then the monument.
And you can match it up right, but there's something about the lens that makes it
but my angle is a little bit off, but I'm looking at the angle of the tombstone that he has his hand on, and that is correct.
Yeah.
But it's just something is going on in the background with that other one. It's a very weird one. And I took like 20 pictures, and I can't match. I have to go a do-over and just try something else. But I say, it's no big deal, because there's like 3 other shots in that cemetery from that photo shoot that I want to get anyway.
Yeah, I must have done, I think, 50 mashups in my 4 days in Chicago, because I went in, I wasn't even that prepared. I would just wake up really early before everybody else, and I would look up Untouchables. I'd look up the movie About Last Night, and it was all right there by our hotel. And then I guess I should be embarrassed, but I'm not, because you guys brought up, I think, Steve Dahlman, who's very proud of taking pictures from crappy movies.
Yes, I think it's great that he does that.
So one of my so I spent due time getting all of the baby carriage spots in Union Station. It's a beautiful station. I've already talked about that. And I still have to mash up all my baby carriage spots. And I did that back in 2019 too. But I went back this time because I knew that one of my favorite movies that I saw when I was a kid.
I've never seen it. I still never seen it.
Man, let me tell you, the people that have chimed in about this, they know, they saw it too. And they're like, oh my gosh.
I saw Rob Brady. He's like, great movie. I'm like, I never even heard of it.
So the movie's called On the Right Track. It's with Gary Coleman. Now, my dad, when I was a kid, loved trains. Like he loved trains, and he grew up in Brooklyn and remembered the trolleys and streetcars and things like that, and just loved trains. And so when I saw this Gary Coleman movie in 1980 or whatever it was, and he lived in Union Station. I didn't know where Union Station was. I didn't know it was in Chicago.
Right.
He lives in a locker, and I also loved Lisa.
So crazy. What a crazy concept! What a crazy plot.
Yeah, and it's crazy. There's a lot of people in that movie that went on to do other things. Like Lisa Eilbacher, she was in Beverly Hills Cop with Eddie Murphy, and that Michael Lembeck was in a bunch of things. I think he was in One Day at a Time or something like that. And Maureen Stapleton is in it, and Norman Fell. And for some reason,
Norman Fell, that's Mr. Roper.
It is Mr. Roper. Yeah, he's the mayor. Awesome. He's the mayor in the movie. But there's a really weird part of the movie where Bill Russell, the NBA player, the Boston, he recently passed away. He's in the movie, and he has this strange role as he's this kind of like father figure to Gary Coleman. He works in the station, but it's kind of like a gym or a spa because they're always walking around in towels. It's really a dated concept. Like, can you imagine like being at Madison Square Garden, walking around in a towel, going there to take a shower?
No, really it's batshit crazy. No.
Yeah. And the whole thing is that his gift or whatever. First of all, he's afraid of the city, so he lives in a locker in Union Station. He doesn't know where his parents are, so I guess he's an orphan. But his gift is that he can magically know who's going to win the triple in horse racing. So he parlays that into earning everyone else money. He can never win if he tries to get money for himself. But anyone else can say, all right, tell me which horses are going to win, and he picks it. And he's a shoe shine boy. So it's such a weird plot. It is. But as a kid, when I saw it, when he makes the city money, he actually makes Mr. Roper like $1 million. They paint a freight car and they let him live in it and operate his porter business out of it. And as a kid, I thought that was the coolest thing ever, that he's living on on a train car.
Train,
it was amazing. It's amazing.
I gotta watch this.
It's ridiculous. And of course, the only images I could find were worse than standard definition on the whole movie. You can watch it on YouTube for free, but it's almost like someone recorded it with a video camera from a VHS tape.
Sure.
It's super jumpy, but there's actually some really funny one-liners that Gary Coleman delivers. Some of it's overtly racist, but it's hilarious too.
Yeah. Well, if you watch like those shows like From Different Strokes to All in the Family to Jefferson, it's all that way. Sure.
Yeah. But it's pretty funny. I mean, Gary Coleman can absolutely get away with it. And
of course, it's also the time, dude. It's like whatever.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved being there, and I was like laughing out loud to myself because I'm like trying to line it up. Nobody's ever even seen this movie.
But you see that's a perfect example of who cares what anyone else likes. Like you're there and you're like, wow, this is awesome, and you're having an experience yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude,
I ate it up. So I was just trying to think of like what else I got, because one of the things that people have said, I guess, about me in the group is that I mostly do hip hop stuff, and I don't know if that's true anymore. Like I'm kind of all over the map. I certainly.
You're definitely. I think because you have done so much hip hop, and you do a lot of hip hop.
Yeah.
I think that's what people automatically just go to. I think I automatically go to that too when I think about you.
Yeah.
Because it's also, you know what it is also? Your artwork, your boxes, so it's a lot of hip hop, even though you're doing Gary Coleman movies and the Untouchables, you know what I mean? But listen, you've done Ferris Bueller, you've done a lot of movies too. But I think it's because there's so much, you love hip hop and the whole culture so much, and there's a lot of it that's not just Delta Bravo related that you post. That we're all friends on Facebook. You don't post that to the group, but you post that to your page, and we all still see it anyway. You know.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So that's probably what it is. But yeah, when I think of who's like the hip hop guy, it's you.
Well, I mean, I'll take that. That's great.
Oh, I know. Well, a lot of people think that I'm the horror guy, but that's not true either.
Right.
Like at all, I'm all over the map.
Yeah, I do feel like I'm just looking at some of my pictures here, and I did so many of the Untouchables because they were all there. They were just all, and I think it illustrates what we're trying to do in a way that you could almost just bump into stuff. You just go, oh, this is a cool building, and then you realize, oh, I know why it's cool. It was in this movie.
Sure.
Yeah, it was really interesting being in France too. I had never been to France.
I've never been to Europe at all.
Yeah, that was me up until a couple of years ago. We went to London, and then I actually really love London. I think it's a great city. And then we took the Channel this year to Paris, which felt kind of ambitious for us because we don't speak any French at all. And when you go to London, you're like, well, at least I speak the language. I'm not going to go in my car here, but I can communicate. When we go to France, you really it's unless you speak French, you're kind of like at the mercy of everyone.
Did you drive a vehicle at all or no?
No.
I would be.
France, I probably would have. France is the same side as us, but
is it?
Yeah, but London's not, and
that would throw me for a loop. I would be the guy that gets honked at and yelled at a lot because I would be all over because
I would be in an accident in England for sure. It's
100%.
Because even crossing the street there, even crossing the street is an adventure because it says look right, look left. They want you to look both ways because once you think you have it figured out, there's a street where the cars can come from both directions. And then some roads are one way. It's
different.
Even on foot. I was just looking at one of the things that I thought was really cool in Paris was there was a guy in I think 1917 who he was a filmmaker when films were still really new, and he asked Edgar Degas if he would be in his film, the famous painter. And Edgar Degas was very old at the time, and he's like, absolutely not. I have no interest in being in your film. And so what he did was he went kind of guerrilla style, and he set up like his camera on the corner of a street, and Edgar Degas walked by one day, so he got him on film. And for me, that's amazing because you see these people moving, you see their paintings, and you might see a still photograph, but you don't see them moving. So I thought that was the coolest thing. It's a 4-second video. You got 4 seconds of this old man walking by, and you have to believe it's Edgar Degas.
Yeah.
But I went and ran down that location because where he lived is well known. His home actually has a plaque on it. And then I went to the corner and everything matched up. So I got this 100-year-old video still to match up.
Wow.
That was kind of cool. And then I got a good Cary Grant one. That was in the UK. A bunch of AC/DC and
that's awesome.
Yeah, man. I had a ball, and I have no intention of stopping. Oh, one thing I just saw that I was so excited about this, and I posted it, and it kind of went by like nobody really paid too much attention, but I was thrilled about it. Before I left for the London trip, I found what was purported to be the first picture of the Rolling Stones ever as a band.
Yeah.
They're sitting cross-legged on the street in front of these row homes, these apartment buildings. And then I did more research, and the photographer who's credited was like, oh, it's on this street. And I looked on the street that he mentioned, and I'm like, that's not right. Like the buildings don't match up at all, and they should, because um, I think they're still supposed to be there. And so I did a whole bunch of research and found out that it was on the street called Eden Grove. And the only reason I found that was that Mick Jagger recently did some kind of art installation where they remade the interior of his apartment with like dirty dishes and all kinds of things, so you could walk in and see what kind of squalor they lived in
Yeah.
when they were just getting started. And when I saw that, and I typed in Eden Grove, and there's a number 9 or 90 in the background, and I put that all together. I brought it up on Google Maps, and it's the exact same building, looks exactly the same. And so it was easy to do once I just got down on the street, because they're sitting in the road.
Yeah.
So the photographer's low, kind of looking up. It was one of the easiest ones to match up, but it's so cool to see them so young and kind of figuring out what it's like to pose for pictures and the band. Yeah, I just love it. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man, it was great. It was a really, really good trip. I mean, really for all the same reasons, I think that you had so much fun on your trip. You go in prepared, and it's such a payoff when you realize that things haven't changed, and you're in the space, and you're
so much that I saw on this trip was not changed. So much of it, like they didn't even dress up certain things for movies and TV shows that I went to. Like it's the exact same. Like they didn't even like change the name or paint it a different color. It's like it's the same thing from like years and years and years ago, which is awesome. It's like legit, like on the movie set, you know. And like you were saying, it's like I love the portion of mapping out and preparing and stuff. Like I can't wait. Like I'm working a lot right now. There's a lot of people on vacation at work, so I'm shot and I'm just working a lot. So once these next 2 weeks are over, things go back to normal, where I'll be able to sit down and put a few hours into, like, initially, like I need to learn how Cali is mapped out, especially in the Hollywood, LA. You know, there's a lot of little things here and there, from like Santa Monica to San Bernardino to this to that to all these little areas which aren't far from each other, but I need to learn where what is and then narrow it down what I want to hit. And then I can't wait to start to map out next summer's even bigger road trip. I can't.
I'm really excited for you. That sounds like it's going to be amazing. I like the idea also of making sure you go to Tulsa. I haven't been there, and so
you need to go.
Yeah, no, I know, and I had a couple of loose plans to go. I was going to go one weekend in the spring, and I didn't go.
It's so dope, bro, and I can't recommend it enough. You need to book a night or two at the Greaser Hideout.
Yeah,
it's right across the street, and for anyone that's watching and listening, it is a house which is directly across the street from the Outsiders House Museum, and you follow it. It's an Airbnb. Danny has hired a legitimate Airbnb person to run it and communicate with you. Her name is Danny, and you follow it on Instagram at the Greaser Hideout Airbnb Tulsa. And it's a whole house. I think it sleeps like 7 people if you want. There's 2 bedrooms. There's 3 beds there. There's a pull-out couch. There's a couple of couches. There's a washer and dryer. There's everything, a refrigerator, a full kitchen. You can cook. You can do everything is Outsiders related. There's autographs on the kitchen wall of everybody from C. Thomas Howell to Ralph Macchio to extras to greasers to rumble greasers to it's just the whole experience is awesome. So, and it's right across the street.
I love the story about Danny just showing up in his truck saying, hop in, let's go hit sites.
Hop in, let's go hit spots. And it's like, I just see this big truck whipping around the corner and the license plate says 2-bit. I'm like, this is great. And he's like, come on in. And we just started ripping around Tulsa.
That's just incredible. I love that. One of the things I was I'm trying to think of ways to I guess enhance the experience of talking about this and going through and getting other people involved. And I don't know how to do it, but in some way we should make the podcast more visual, where you could actually share some of the photos.
Right.
I guess last spring, I decided, because every once in a while someone posts one and it's like, oh my gosh, that's beautiful. Like as its own thing. It's beautiful the way the old photos there. It's beautiful the way the new photos there. And I'm like, that should be a poster. So I started, I actually went to Kinko's and I made sure everything was as high resolution as I could make it. The logo was strong and the movie logo or the whatever I had added on there was strong. And I printed out different sizes just to see what was doable, and it turned out great. And I know Danny Johnson brought up the idea of having a get together of people and having coffee and just talking about stuff. But I want to even have a show where you can have an exhibition of these things. Now there's obviously hurdles because some people have heard me say, one of the photographers I got in touch with was not happy at all that I did a mashup. And I was sort of surprised, but I think once they get connected to Getty or one of these other photography agencies that sell their photos for them, then they can't sign off on things. But if you get someone like David Corio or somebody else who's excited about the idea, I'm not even sure if it's really still just their work. If you're changing it or erasing edges and you're putting your thing behind it, and if it's a still from a movie, I think you're good to go. But when I printed them out, I thought this is cool. Like I could see us like swapping things or trading things. And there's just some, actually, one of the ones you did, I think I laid it on pretty thick when you posted it. It was the Matt Dillon one where he's leaning on the fence. And I'm like, damn, that's beautiful. And it epitomizes everything we're doing. I mean, and that's at the headquarters. It's where Danny bought the house and Danny first got the idea for this. And then the light that you captured, maybe by accident, maybe on purpose, but
no, it was just that time of day. That was like that was in the morning, the day that we were about to leave. That was right before we met up with Danny for breakfast. So that was probably about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning.
But I could see, I would want that in my house. Like I'd want to do it myself. All things being equal, but I would also want to buy yours. I'd say, hey, like I could, pay for printing, or I'll trade you one line or whatever it is. But I think there's something about the visual part, even though it is just the icing and just the evidence that we were there. It's exciting to see what people have made. And with podcasts, we're telling stories and we're hopefully painting a picture in people's heads.
Right.
But if we could throw up some of the images while we're talking on YouTube, that would work. On a podcast, on Spotify, not so much.
Right. That's why every once in a while I'll do the on location things when I have time and when it's feasible and there's not going to be people all over the place. Like that's when I have time. I would love to do more of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And there's people that are like Rayanne is doing. He's doing blogs now, or vlogs, where he paid me the compliment of saying, hey, like I'm going to go to New York. Tell me your top 10 spots that are in and around Washington Square Park, which was easy, right? Because we've all been there, and there's hundreds of spots there. And so he gave me a lot of credit as he walked around and explored, but he took it and made it into a video. And he's part of this kind of adjacent community to ours, where it's a guy named Scott on Tape, and he does vlogs. And when Rayanne has gone out to California, they've linked up, and Sean Pease and you were on Sean's Instagram live thing. And I like that there's all this overlap, and I'm a little envious that people have been able to link up in person, because I haven't really done that yet. But I think there's something to be said about making it more visual, or showing people what we've done. we can certainly do it on Facebook and Instagram, but the video thing is working out really well. And I was just thinking posters might be kind of a cool next step for what I'm trying to do. Like if I have one that I feel really good about,
Yeah.
like that Busta Rhymes one that you brought up.
I love that Busta Rhymes.
I printed that one.
It's one of my favorites that you've done.
Yeah, I remember you saying that. That was cool. And
yeah.
And so I have the same reaction. Like some are like, yeah, you know, yawn, like everybody's hit that, or it looks like a lot of other people's work. But every once in a while, like I did this one of the Beastie Boys, and I've done a ton of the Beastie Boys, but I did one where they're sitting on DeBrosses Street, and it's a cool photograph, and I lined it up really well, and I turned it into like an 18 by 24 poster because it looks really good. And I put the Delta Bravo logo at the top and the Beastie Boys logo at the bottom. And I thought, you know, and I told people I'm not going to sell these. I don't have the rights to sell anything, but I definitely liked printing it, and Tinker printed it no problem. So I don't know. I'm not sure where to go with that, but I do like how people are putting their different stamps on things. I love how you put the frame around your work. I noticed you changed your edge a little bit, like you're starting to do like the soft feathered edge now.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just something that I just was like, I think there was I don't remember which one it was, but I was like, you know what? I feel like I'm going to do this with this for whatever reason. I don't know. And I'm like, wow, like this came out good. Oh, I know which one it was. It was the one with from Marathon Man where Lawrence Olivier.
Nice.
It's just this weird angle, and the building behind it has a lot of columns, like just a lot of long windows on it. So I'm like, this is going to be kind of difficult, but my angle was dead on, and I just wanted to make it, I don't know, soft around the edges, and I just kind of liked it, and it's just, I don't know. And it's really, before I forget, you were saying like to put up, you know, posters and whatever, because just to piggyback back to the Greaser hideout, there is one very large framed mash in the Greaser hideout.
Really?
And I'm not sure who did it. Maybe Danny Boy did it. I don't know, because there's no credit to it, but there's a logo on it, and it's from, obviously it's from The Outsiders, but it's the pine scene where there's the little scuffle and he pulls out the switchblade. You know what I'm talking about? That whole thing. But there's that. It's big. It's like probably. It's like poster size, maybe like 24, like maybe 36, but it's an odd shape. It's maybe like 36 by something, I don't know, but it's longer and it's a mash. And I looked, it's in the kitchen in the Greaser hideout. I'm like, that's freaking cool. There's a mash in here, like, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, there was
makes sense.
Yeah, there was Delta Bravo, regular red and white logo. Danny Boy, I stole them. Sorry, buddy. But there was 3, because I never seen anybody with them. I guess maybe you have to rent the house in order to get the exclusive. But there was 3 coasters, Delta Bravo, red and white, regular like cardboard, like bar coasters that were in a basket on the table in the living room. I'm like, well, these are used in order to drink stuff and put your glass on. I used like nothing. I think we drank a cup of coffee, and I made sure I washed it out and left the place. It was like, I think I even like made the bed a little bit. Like you didn't even know we were there, you know. Like completely respected that place. And I saw them. I'm like, I didn't use them, but people would use them and ruin them. So you know what? I'm taking them. So I took the 3 little cardboard coasters. But then Danny, the girl who runs the B&B, gave me a review and said that the place was immaculate and everything was respected and everything was beautiful. Can't wait to have you back again. So I got away scot-free with the 3 Delta Bravo coasters.
Nice.
Yeah, but it's cool. There's a mash in there. It's pop culture. You know, it's just a great spot. Like, and some of the things in the museum that I didn't even realize that you don't really see pictures of on the group and stuff like that. Like, wow. Like for instance, like it's behind glass and I'm looking at it and I'm like, no way. Danny Boy got his hands on in the movie when Cherry Valance throws the soda in Matt Dillon's face. Maybe this will cool you off, you know, and splashes him in the face. He has that exact skirt that she's wearing with the Coca-Cola stain on it behind glass. Wow. I'm like, That's just so cool that you have that, you know?
Yeah, man, I tell you, when they first did the museum and Danny was like looking for things and I was able to send a drawing of Matt Dillon to the museum. I was really happy to do it and excited to do it and told some of my students about it because I teach middle school and they all read it in 7th grade. But it was, I think, this spring and Danny's always really good about this, about posting, like Leonardo DiCaprio came through and Green Day came through.
Great.
And I
Jack
was always
White.
like, oh, this is incredible. But man, when he posted that day that Matt Dillon showed up,
Dude.
it was like a national holiday, man.
Yeah.
And then I think I sent him a little note. I'm like, is there any chance, like, he saw the drawing? And then he sent me a picture. I think it was him that sent me a picture of S.E. Hinton and Matt Dillon standing in front of the drawing, and I was showing anybody who would listen.
Of course, dude. That's just a cool moment, dude.
Oh yeah, man. It's like it's so cool. And I was so happy for Danny because I know he was just like over the moon that Matt Dillon. Because I mean, who else needs to? I guess Tom Cruise, but I would think Matt Dillon's the top of the list.
Sure. Yeah.
Tom Cruise is arguably more famous, but
100%.
But Matt Dillon was the star of that movie,
Yeah, for me too. Yeah, Matt Dillon was the greatest in it. Come on, he was the knucklehead. But it's like you walk in there and I won't spoil everything for you, but one thing, I stood there for several minutes just staring at it. And I'm like, and then Danny Boy told me the story. He said that Ralph Macchio, he always saves one item or just a handful of items from everything he does. Mm-hmm. Whatever movie set, TV show, whatever, Cobra Kai, Karate Kid, whatever it is. And when they had like the grand opening of the museum, Ralph Macchio came there and handed Danny Boy the sneakers he's wearing, the actual pair of jeans where he pulls the switchblade out and stabs Bob by the fountain, and his shirt and his jacket from the movie. And it's just like, it's all right there. It's from like the famous scene where he pulls out the switchblade and he goes, and next thing you know, the screen gets filled with blood. Like that outfit with those sneakers is right there. Like, dude, crazy. You know what I mean? Just cool. I mean, every language that the book is written in is there. There's so much cool little Easter eggs about the movie that's there. It's an amazing spot, dude, and you need to go.
Oh yeah, it has to happen. And I've really lived vicariously through everybody who's visited, because I've watched the video of the opening and like the ribbon cutting and that kind of thing, and I would see Thomas Howell doing the bus tours.
Yeah.
And then, when I see people going there and doing mashes, like I know you brought it up on Danny's episode, and I'm so glad you did, but that mashup he did with a drone at Crutchfield,
dude,
so great. It's so premeditated, right? Like
he's like, I went there on purpose. I needed to get that shot. Like, it's so good. Yeah. So good.
Yeah, it's so good. And I one of my favorite, I guess it's an early mash, kind of. Well, early in the whole Outsiders thing anyway. I think Tom Jacobs, Butchie, I think he did a really great, I think it was a side-by-side of Ralph Macchio getting up and getting the knife out of his pocket.
And he's doing the same pose.
From behind. Yeah,
yes.
It's really well done. And
yes.
Yeah, I don't know if Jimmy Cash was part of that or not. I feel like they were there the same day.
Maybe.
And I didn't, because he was just telling the story on one of your episodes about how they got stuck up on the jungle gym because they were surrounded by
stray dogs.
Yeah,
and it's funny because when I was at Crutchfield Park, there was stray dogs running around.
Yeah,
and I thought about Jimmy Cash,
and Danny brought it up too.
Yeah, Arkansas, there's stray dogs. Yeah, it's crazy. But like that's another spot when you go visit there, dude. Like so much of that movie, like obviously there's the Outsider's house, and then there's the rumble field is a block away. Then there's like right around that block is Crutchfield Park. And then on your way there is Johnny Cade's house. And then you go to the opposite corner of Crutchfield Park, and that's where Matt Dillon gets killed by the cops at the end.
You did a great mashup of that, man. That turned out really good.
You know what was cool? You know what I think the best part of it, besides doing it and being there and seeing how nothing has really changed, and I'm looking and I'm like, wow, there's the hill, the slight hill where he gets shot and he falls down the hill, and I'm there and I'm at that spot. Like, this is awesome. Is that Randy Shanofsky commented on that MASH, and he said that the MASH for him is amazing for several reasons. One, that I waited until nighttime to actually do it because it's a night scene in the movie. Mm-hmm. And Randy was actually there and witnessed that scene get shot in the movie.
Wow.
So for Randy, who's on the board of directors of the museum, his story about S.E. Hinton and being on set is incredible. So for him to chime in and say that, like, that was like, all right, Jim, I'll pat myself. Like, well done,
Yeah. Well, that's such a good example because of why we love this, is that if we were doing this in a vacuum or just doing it for ourselves, it would be fun, but it's, hearing Randy's story, and he's such a gentleman, and he's such a wealth of great stories, and he articulates them beautifully. Yeah. So for him to weigh in, he's thrown me a couple of bones too, where he's like, "Oh, that looks good," and I'm like, "Yeah, like it feels good." And
somebody like him who has such a connection
told me, "Oh yeah, you nailed it."
Yeah, and for somebody like him who has such a connection to the movie and all of that stuff and the stuff he's done, and he's the consummate gentleman. You know what I mean? Like, that's one person I can't wait to actually meet him. I feel like I know the guy in real life anyway, because he was on the Blast Furnace. He was on this. We have each other's phone number. He'll call me. He's like, "How are you, my friend?" I'm like, "I'm good, buddy. Like, how are you?" He's like, "This is a little bit too much to text, so I figured I'm calling you. And I hope I'm not disturbing you." I'm like, "No, I'll talk to you for 3 hours, dude. Like, you're never disturbing me." So I feel like I know the guy. So I can't wait. Randy, shout out to you, man. Salt of the earth guy. And I can't wait to
shout out to Joe Schellinger, shout out to Andy and Nako and Jimmy Cash. Some of these guys I've never met in person, but I like
same here.
I feel like I know them because I like this morning I went in to school to get my classroom all ready, and I still had, I think, 3/4 of the Danny Johnson Mission Statements podcast to listen to. So I felt like I was with you guys. Like, I was cleaning my room up and organizing my stuff and listening to these stories.
Yeah.
Brilliant, man. I there's something really great about the podcast format, but the way it's bringing this group together. I mean, who knows if anybody outside of our group is actually listening to this? I don't really care.
I don't care either.
But I like the idea that other people might listen and want to be in this podcast. Like, I remember talking to Rayanne a couple months ago, and he's like, "Oh, like, I really like what you guys in Delta are doing, and how do you become a member?" And I'm like, "You're a member. Like, you just
there's no rules. Just hit
logo on it.
Just go hit spots, and when you post it, put an address and a logo.
You're in.
That's it. You're in.
And we want to see what you do, and it's exciting, and it pushes us to do more things. I wish there were. I wish I had more spots that I had discovered myself, or just like had found and nobody else saw, but that happens very rarely. I remember early on, and we've talked about this before, there were some people in this group who are no longer in the group that were like, "You didn't find that. We knew where that was." And they didn't want to give addresses, and they didn't want to give any kind of
who cares
encouragement. And I remember Steve Mona brought that up too. Speaking of Steve Mona,
love Steve Mona.
Yeah, man, they're all
I love that dude, man.
They all bring something to the group. Like, they'll even, I don't even know how many mashes that they do. I mean, Steve will say, I'm behind the scenes guy, but
he is. I mashed a couple of things for him.
But just knowing where everything is a huge.
That dude is
amazing.
I've reached out to him, like, I'll go crazy, and I'm like, do I throw the towel in and just ask Mona? I'm like, you know what, Steve, where is this? And I'll send him a picture. 30 seconds later, he's like, oh, that's on the corner of like the Houston and Avenue, whatever, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I'll go to Google Maps and I'll be like, how? And I'll even ask him, how do you know that? He's like, I don't know. I just do. I'm not even sure how I know.
Yeah. I find that to be really inspiring that there's this human element and then he also probably has so many stories about those locations too. It's one thing to know where it is, but to have worked and been around those spaces for so long.
Oh, well, he was the commanding officer of the New York City Vandal Squad. I mean, he's running around train tunnels chasing vandals. But then again, he's friends with them. It's so funny. It's like Robert De Niro and Al Pacino in Heat. You know what I mean? It's like, you're good at what you do, I'm good at what I do. You know, we respect each other, but if we cross paths, someone's going down. You know what I mean? That's what I always think about when it comes to his former job. But he's, like I said in his podcast, he's the busiest retired man ever. He's always all over the place.
And he likes to travel and
good for him. He deserves it.
Enjoys his life. It's so cool, man. And all of these, I got such a kick out of seeing Nako in that documentary.
The disappearance at the Cecil Hotel.
Yeah, what a crazy story. But and that just lends itself to how I see LA. I don't know anything about LA other than what I've seen.
But I'm gonna go to the Cecil Hotel when I go there.
Of course, right? And you know what's right next to that is the U2 Where the Streets Have No Name rooftop, because it's in the background. I think they finally changed the name of it or painted the wall.
Of the hotel?
Yeah.
Yeah, they changed the name, but I think there's actually, it still says Cecil Hotel.
Okay.
On it, like somewhere for nostalgic, whatever purposes. Just like the Jackson Hole Diner, it still has Airline Diner on it from Goodfellas. You know, it's like the same kind of thing. It's kind of like you have to kind of keep it there. You know, it's just the staple. Yeah. So there's definitely the Cecil Hotel I want to hit. I want to hit the one on Wonderland Avenue where the 4 on the floor murders happened. The Wonderland Avenue murder.
Yeah, that's a crazy story.
Fawn Ranch, Reservoir Dog spots, Pulp Fiction spots. You know, it was something that I didn't know, that everything for the most part from Ferris Bueller's Day Off is in Chicago except for Ferris's house.
Right.
Ferris's house is in LA.
Yeah. I was just out in Chicago. I still haven't gotten to Cameron's house. But I
want to go to the Shameless house.
Shameless?
The show Shameless?
Oh, I don't know that one.
With William H. Macy?
Okay.
Oh my God, that show, bro, it's called Shameless for a reason. Yo, that show is batshit crazy. I loved that show. If you don't have your kids, no kids around, watch that show, and it's something. Oh my God. But it takes place in Chicago, and I heard that it's a rough neighborhood. I think Danny Johnson actually hit that house before. Of course he did. But I know it's a rough neighborhood because it's like, south side of Chicago or something like that. It's bad, but I want to hit that Shameless house.
Yeah, that's what he was saying about a lot of the Blues Brothers locations too, is that they were in some of the tougher neighborhoods. What was I going to just?
It's like Rocky. That's a bad neighborhood, man.
Yeah, I've heard that. In fact, a friend of mine just did like a Rocky tour for his wedding anniversary. And,
boy, that's in Kensington and Philly. It's brutal.
Yeah, they had to edit a lot of stuff out. Like the tour guide said, "Don't get out of the car here."
It's brutal there. I was just in a spot that was really kind of shady, and I was like, I don't know. But I got out, and it wasn't anything where I needed to mash it, but it was just because there's nothing to mash. But I took a picture of Henry Hill's childhood home. The guy who Ray Liotta played in Goodfellas, the real guy. Yeah, and that's in East New York. That's on like Pine Street and like Pitkin Avenue. It's super shady over there. Yeah. And I did that yesterday before I went to Cypress Hill Cemetery for the biggie ones.
I saw your post for sure. I didn't realize that was where it was.
Yes, yeah. It was about 10 minutes from the Cypress Hill Cemetery.
That's wild.
Yeah, it was a little shady. Sketchy, but listen, these are the things you do, and it's a little bit of a thrill. All right, is the coast clear? All right, cool. Let me get ready, and maybe have to leave the car running and make sure my door is unlocked, so I can get back in the car if need be quick and get out and take your shots and bounce. But you get the shot, and that's what we do.
I think I mentioned this on when I interviewed you last time, but I want to invite myself on your excursion to White Plains Avenue or White Plains Road, to where Louis Cafe is from the Godfather movie.
Yes.
And I know
So,
you,
dude, we'll plan it and
Yeah.
we'll go. Me, you, and Joe Schellinger has to be in.
Of course.
It's like his favorite movie. And when I posted when I sent him the pictures of where the toilet tank from The Godfather, where the gun is hidden behind it, I showed him that wall from it's not a bathroom anymore. It's like a storage closet where there was like brooms and mops and stuff in there. The toilet's gone, but you see the outline of that hanging toilet thing, and that's where the gun was. And I said that he's like, "How did you get that picture? What the hell?" I was like, "Research, bro, research."
Yeah. I have some ideas about. I know you have a couple tricks up your sleeve about how you're going to approach that.
Yeah.
But I think it was Nako on his episode. He was talking about a Michael Keaton movie or something about like you can get anywhere with a clipboard.
Yes.
With a clipboard.
A cup of coffee helps too. Phil the Mad Russian said something about holding a cup of coffee and having a smile like gets you in places.
Yeah, I remember him saying that. I thought that was really interesting too.
It's true though, if you think about it.
Danny Johnson just brought up that just act like you belong there. I'm not so good at that, but the way you carry yourself matters. And
100%.
I think I have that sort of like confused look a lot. So people are like, all right.
Yeah. Well, you made it in and out of the Crystal Ballroom pretty well.
That worked out great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm happy about that. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
So I have I was wondering about in the future when you have other guests on, some of my favorite podcasts about movies and things, they've come up with categories about the movie, like if you had to redo the cast, or if you who gave the best performance, or if you could just give like an Oscar to one person. The one I listen to a lot is called The Rewatchables with Bill Simmons, and they go through all these movies, but he has different guests on, but they, instead of just rehashing the movie, they have these categories, and there's no right answer. It's all opinion. Like, who won the movie and who would have done a better job if they recast it, that kind of thing. So I was thinking in terms of this podcast.
I'm open to all suggestions, dude.
Yeah. No, I know you are. I was just thinking, like, I'm always kind of curious when you interview people, like and people are great about sharing their favorite stories, but like maybe if you said, what are your top 5 or your best, what do you think your best stories are, or your best matchups?
Yeah.
Now, if you did mashes, that's the problem is if it's just audio.
Right.
But I think everybody likes to hear like top 5 stories, top 3.
Of course. Like I sometimes I forget because this is so off the cuff. Like I don't have any notes here. So But what I do sometimes ask people is like, what's like your bucket list spot that you haven't gotten to yet? Like what's that one? Do you have that, or did you hit that yet?
No, I do have one, and I don't think I'm going to be able to hit it. I don't think it's there anymore. But I think I shared this with you maybe a long time ago, but one of I call them white whales.
Yeah, I have white whales too.
Yeah, the big white whale for me is a picture of Michael K. Williams and Wendell Pierce from The Wire, Bunk Moreland and Omar.
Yes.
They're sitting on a bench. It's one of the most powerful scenes in the whole show. I think it's season. Oh man, I forget which season it is now. I don't want to get it wrong. Okay. But Wendell Pierce is the police officer. Omar is the criminal. He's I guess an informant at that moment, and they're trying to locate a policeman's gun, and they're very rarely in the scene together talking because they're on opposite sides. And they meet on this bench, and Wendell Pierce just lets him have it. He just makes him feel horrible for the choices he's made and how he lives his life. And it gives me chills every time I see it. And it's also just visually beautiful. The way they're sitting there, there's this big red brick building behind them, painted red. and they're on this bench that was probably temporary. But I can't for the life of me figure out where it is in Baltimore. And I grew up near Baltimore. I've been in Baltimore a lot, and I've looked a lot. And I have a feeling that the building might not be there anymore, which would really bother me because I really want to get it someday. I've done quite a lot from The Wire, although it was years ago now that I did The Wire, but I've done probably, I would say, more than anybody of The Wire because of
100%.
my proximity to Baltimore.
Sure.
But I did a whole bunch from season 2, like the dock workers and their little cafe that they worked at, and lot when McNulty was tailing Stringer Bell. There's all these places on the street, and Baltimore is not a very big city, so it's pretty, if you know where you're going. Going under Key Bridge is still possible, where Frank Sabatka gets killed. It's just, I don't know if you're a fan of that show, but
I've never watched it all the way through, and people think I'm crazy for not.
Well, there's a lot of people who are like, I gave it a try and it was boring, and I could sort of see that, but now I've watched it several times all the way through, I just think it's brilliant. I think it's great character development, and everybody's so flawed, and there weren't a whole lot of shows like that where the police were not the good guys, and I think the police are not the good guys on The Wire. Nobody's the good guy. In fact, the best person on the whole show is the heroin addict. So, and he's probably the most redeeming character. They're all so flawed, and I always think that the name The Wire is a really great name because they put it out there as The Wire that's how they're listening. But I think it's the Wire is really the difference between like one side and the other. It's a very thin thing. Like the people that are the police officers and the criminals are so similar, and I just the writing's great, and it was just celebrated its 20th anniversary. Method Man did a podcast about it called The Wire at 20, and I just get all jazzed to watch it again when I hear stuff like that. But yeah, my white whale is definitely that one image, because I got what I wanted from most of the other ones. And some of those neighborhoods are still pretty unsafe.
Sure.
And I would never want to insult anybody. There's a really great picture of Michael K. Williams as Omar that I know exactly where it is. It would take 2 seconds to get it, but I would drive into a neighborhood where they would not appreciate me being there, and it would also, if I got out to take pictures, they would have a problem with that too.
Sure.
So I would never want to piss anybody off, but at the same time, I think it's a beautiful piece of art, and it told like a story that sort of needs to be told, that we're losing the drug war. And David Simon just did some really incredible interviews about how he made the show and why he made the show and how futile the whole situation really is. But and Baltimore is my city, and it's sad now. You know, it's not what it could be or what it should be. And I digress, but my white whale is for sure that picture. In fact, I actually want to paint it. I think I might.
So paint it, man.
I think I might, because I don't think I'm gonna be able to run it down, and I just think it's the facial expressions are great. I found some really great stills, and they're super clear, like high resolution. I would love to paint from that, because I think they're such great characters.
I have like there's a couple of spots that I'm sure I will wind up hitting next summer in California that I really want to get. I want to walk around Spawn Ranch. Like, there's certain things that I'll have that moment like I had in like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre house, like crazy. But as far as like images that I have in my phone, I have 2 of them that are in my phone that have been in there for way too long, man. One of them is more of a white whale than the other one, but they're both like, one of them is, I've probably mentioned this before, probably maybe with you, and it's Jay-Z on top of the roof of his old building on State Street,
Yeah.
And it's just a simple picture, and he's looking towards the Barclays Center.
Yeah.
And it's basically like if you know the meaning behind it, it's he's standing on the house where he came from nothing, and he's looking down at the Barclays Center, which is literally like across the street from his old building at an arena that is sold out that he's going to perform in later on that day.
Yeah.
So, and it's a rooftop shot.
I've taken the shot everyone else has of the facade, 560 State Street.
I have too. I've actually rang for the superintendent there, and he's never answered for me. There's that, and there's one that I harassed Steve Mona for it, and I stumped the Mona because he's like,
you know which one you're going to talk about.
It's the dream sequence in The Exorcist when Karras is running across the street and his mother is coming up out of the subway station. And as he's crossing, she stops and she waves at him, and he's still running across the street. And she turns back around and slowly walks back down. That scene, it's a creepy scene. It's very weird the way it's shot, and he's sleeping. And you hear him breathing in the background because he's sleeping, but that's his dream. But you hear him like breathing in his sleep in that scene. But it's very flashy and stuff. But that train station, there's nothing to go by.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a brick building right next to it. That brick building could now be a glass TD Bank or something, you know. And plus the facade of the train stations have changed since 1973. So that right there is one something like I'll put The Exorcist to bed and feel so happy once I get that shot.
One of the cool byproducts of being on podcasts and talking these things through, I was on Rayanne's live thing, and he's got a whole crew of people that aren't in Delta Bravo that listen to his live stream, and we were talking about white whales and things, and I had found a thread on Reddit of somebody threw out one like, hey, you need to find this, and it was Jay-Z. This is what made me think of it because you just mentioned Jay-Z. Jay-Z is in a Mercedes, and he's pulling out of a parking spot in the city, and it's in England. And there was a Reddit thread like, where is this? And all these people are like, it says Notting Hill, but I don't know. And people were weighing in like, don't you realize every street in London looks just like that? That architectural style was duplicated. Whenever they put the houses back up after World War II, they just made everything the same.
Yeah.
And and I started looking, and I was like, oh, they're exactly right. It's I can't figure out where this is. I really wanted to be the champion and find it, and just say, this is it. And so I kept coming up with, it's in Notting Hill, it's in Notting Hill. And for some reason, I didn't believe that it was in Notting Hill. And I read some of the stories about why people thought that. They're like, oh, he was there in this year, and they put him up in Notting Hill. That's where he stayed, in an apartment in Notting Hill. Okay. But why was he there? And then I read that he was recording at Battery Studio. So I typed in Battery Studio. It's still there. There's a picture of him standing in front of that building. I couldn't get back there. Actually, I didn't go up there to try to find it because it's a little out of my way. But there was a fence. So if you get in the fence, you'll be able to do one mashup of Jay-Z in front of Battery Studio in London. But I'm like, I bet he drove his rental car to the recording studio, got out, did his recording, and somebody took a picture of him on his way out. So I started spiraling around that neighborhood, and I found all the architecture. It looks exactly the same. I'm like, I can't find the exact spot. I can't find the exact spot. I told this story on Rand's podcast, and I think less than 12 hours later, some guy I've never met was like, is this it? And like, he sent me a picture, and he had actually circled it by hand. He's like, I think I found it. And it was because I'll give myself the assist. I didn't find it.
Right.
But he's like, I started looking around Battery Studio, and it was on one of the streets that I was looking at, but he actually found the exact spot.
Wow.
So it was so cool because it was this organic thing where he took my little kernel
and went off and started researching on his own, looking for this spot. Yeah, that's cool, man.
I sent it to Rand. He's like, "Holy shit, you guys found it! That's crazy."
Yeah.
And so we have we have to kind of like someone has to go there now, because I don't think the guy that sent it to me is from London or England at all.
Right.
But he did what I did, and I just love when that stuff happens. I love when when someone's hit a brick wall and you can help them find it, or someone told you something and you can find it doing a couple of little things. And I kind of miss that, because like so much has been conquered. There's a lot out there still, but I think
dude, it's never ending.
But it starts with people admitting, like, I have a white whale, like I haven't been able to find this.
Yeah.
Like, I love that. I want to be able to find it on my own, but if someone's like, I know where Omar and where Bunk were sitting on that bench, I know where it is. Like I was on a Wire Facebook group, and they had one of the assistant like I guess a camera people, and he's like, I remember that day, I don't know where we were. And I'm like, oh, like you were there.
Yeah, man.
Come on, like give me something. So sometimes it just takes a little bit of information, like the Battery Studio thing, to get close. And that's what I told Rayanne. I said, I think I'm close. I haven't found it. I think I'm close. And that was all it took for someone else to find it.
Yeah.
And that just feels awesome, really. And even though I'm a little envious that I wasn't the one that found it, but
true. Yeah, well, you got an assist, and that's fine. Like I got an assist a while back. I just have to make my way there to go and do it, because I would only go there just to do this one thing, and it's not even that far. Now, there's a band called Madball, right? It's a hardcore band. And I reached out to the bass player. There's a band photo from their first album called Set It Off. And there's a band photo, and it looks like it's underneath a bridge. And I'm like, all right, but that's not necessarily the thing I want to hit. So, but this place looks very similar. So I asked Hoya, the bass player, I'm like, dude, where did you take this? He's like, oh, that's underneath the Williamsburg Bridge, Brooklyn side. I'm like, all right, awesome. Now there's another white whale, which I know where it is, but I don't know if I can get under the bridge anymore or whatever. But the movie Jacob's Ladder with Tim Robbins. Now there's a scene where he's walking underneath, and I don't know if it's the Brooklyn side or the Manhattan side. I want to say it's the Brooklyn side also. And he's walking underneath the Williamsburg Bridge, and then a car comes and chases him down. But there's just a really cool, it's very simple. It's just an open alleyway area. And as you see, the train trestles a little bit on the top. It's just very simple, but he's just in the middle of it, and he's walking underneath this bridge. And I love that movie. It's one of my favorite movies, and I need to hit that spot. And it's funny because that movie is the movie that actually had me and Steve Mona go out to eat one night. And it was the first time I ever ate at Peter Luger's Steakhouse, was with him, because of a location that I asked him, where is this? He's like, oh, that's blah, blah, blah. And that red building behind it is Peter Luger's Steakhouse. I'm like, oh, shit. All right, that's easy to find. And the next thing you know, we start talking. Next thing you know, I hit that spot and we go have steaks at Peter Luger's. It was the first time I was ever there.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, dude.
Love it.
Yeah.
It's funny. Like I think of, there's places it depends on how you start. Like, do you start with like, what are your favorite movies? Years ago, we got a chance to go see Field of Dreams. We went and saw the cornfield and the house.
I would love to go there.
It was incredible, and it's free. You walk up and you're allowed to just walk onto the field and play ball and walk into the corn, and they don't charge you anything. And
that's beautiful.
They just recently started charging the house. You couldn't go in the house, and then eventually they let people in, and you pay a little bit of money to go in the house.
That's fine.
So oh my gosh, we were able to like do mashes inside the house, because
that's awesome.
It's exactly the same. But that was really cool. I never thought I'd be in Iowa. And we were in Chicago a couple years ago, and we were like, my wife said, let's go. It's only a couple more hours. I'm like, really? Iowa's only a couple more hours. And then on the way back, you can hit, there's a little town called Galena, Illinois. And I guess it was famous because Ulysses S. Grant had a house there. But it turns out that in the movie Field of Dreams, which is one of my favorites, they go to Chisholm, Minnesota to find Moonlight Graham. And they don't actually go to Chisholm, Minnesota. They go to Galena, Illinois, and they film Burt Lancaster walking on the street, and it's Galena. And so that was pretty crazy to be there and realize that I was in places where one of my favorite movies was filmed. And so Field of Dreams, and that takes me back out to LA, because I was looking at one of my favorite movies of all time is It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh, how could anyone even a tiny bit dislike that movie, dude?
I know.
That movie it's one of the greatest movies ever made.
Yes, I agree. And so I love Jimmy Stewart, and I know a lot of that movie was filmed on a lot where they think the town was built, and they ended up getting rid of it. But there's a couple of scenes that were filmed in Los Angeles. One of them is, I don't know how familiar you are with every scene, but where they give Martini his own house. It's like on this it's in this little neighborhood where it's Bailey Park. And so it's they make this little new neighborhood, and I'm like, this is a real neighborhood somewhere. This is not a back lot. These are houses that were brand new in 1940, whatever they made that, whenever they made that movie, 47, I think. And I looked up, where did they film Martini's house? Where was Bailey Park? And it's in Los Angeles. It's between, I don't know, the downtown area and the mountains.
Okay.
And so I dropped a flag. The house looks exactly the same as it did. I'm like, that's cool. To mash up a movie that you thought was unmashable is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And it turns out it's not that far from another one that I really want to visit. And it's a different movie than It's a Wonderful Life, but it's Jack Horner's house from Boogie Nights. Like that's like,
dude, stop right there.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if I've ever said it on this podcast, but I'm going to say something that if you put a gun to my head and you ask me what's my all-time favorite movie,
up there, right?
I'm going to say Boogie Nights, dude.
Yeah.
I'm not the biggest Mark Wahlberg fan. It's like, whatever. That movie is absolutely brilliant for so many reasons.
It is. No doubt. I completely agree. I think it's what movies should be. It's so
my God.
So well written. It's tragic. It's
funny. It's ridiculous. There's everything is in that movie.
Yeah.
It's a shit show with drugs, and there's the porn aspect, and there's drugs and violence, and it's funny, and then it's everything.
Movie,
it's everything.
It really is great. The soundtrack's amazing. The performances are amazing.
Don Cheadle, it makes you.
It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
But anyway, Jack Horner.
It makes you want a freaky deaky. It's so he dressed up like a cowboy. It's
the highest quality fidelity. Yeah.
The highest quality fidelity.
Yeah, man.
So
It's
good.
Yeah. So that's on my list. I have no plans to go out there in the immediate future, but I've started dropping all kind of flags all over the map.
Jack Horner's house is where?
I mean, I don't know LA from a hole in the wall, but
there's not a lot really to go by. There's the spot where Alfred Molina.
I found it.
I have Alfred Molina's house where there's
Red Jackson,
where he's throwing the firecrackers. That's Cosmo.
And you know what's crazy about that? I'm sure you know this, but you wanted to go see Wonderland. It's the same story, man. Like
the movie Wonderland too, brilliant.
Yeah, but it's so parallels. Like they obviously inspired by John Holmes. And
absolutely. Yeah, everyone's like, the Boogie Nights is about John Holmes. Not really. Boogie Nights is loosely based bits and pieces of John Holmes, loosely based on the Wonderland murders.
Yeah,
kind of.
Eddie Nash is J. Jackson.
Right. And
down to the big guy with the gun. It's very similar.
Very similar. But I think the movie as a whole is basically a movie about the golden age and then the tragic ending of that whole era in porn. itself,
Mhm.
that whole thing. The movie Wonderland, did you ever see that?
Did, yeah. Not
With
that
Val
long.
Kilmer, that's based solely
Of course.
on the Wonderland murders.
Yeah, but watching it, I was like, this is Boogie Nights more or less. And
Yes.
there was a podcast that talked about the Wonderland murders. You probably like that too, and it went into a lot of detail. And it's
I think I heard it. It's like the panoply. It's
yeah, that's it.
yeah, I've heard a lot of those. Super interesting stuff.
It is. I thought they did a great job, but I kept thinking, oh my gosh, that's Dirk. That's Eddie
Yeah, that's
Murphy.
Dirk Diggler.
They had
I want a
Jack-
name that really pops. You know, it really jumps off the screen.
Cuts glass. Yeah.
That really cuts glass.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good, dude.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah, so Jack Horner's house, Field of Dreams. But so yeah, like making a list, like even if they're not hard to find, like I was really glad I found Jack Horner's house.
Yeah.
It looks like you can drive up to it. Obviously, you won't be able to go in the backyard, but I feel like the backyard is fenced in such a way that you can see it from the perpendicular street. So that whole scene, I mean, the scenes that were in by the pool, I think are you could at least get a picture of where the pool is.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's that. I want to hit the Poltergeist house.
Yeah.
That's another thing I would like to see how the backyard is situated, because like little Heather O'Rourke is burying her parakeet in the backyard, and there's the remote control scene with his neighbor when they are on the same remote control and they're watching the football game. Like I want to see how that is from those two houses. And yeah, I have a whole bunch of stuff that's like ready to go. I probably have about 35 different folders of pictures of movies and crime scenes and all that stuff for California already.
You know, one of the things I thought of you that you would really like this spot. I haven't been there yet, but I dropped a flag, and it's about an hour from Pittsburgh. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere, but it's Buffalo Bill's house.
Yes.
From Silence of the Lambs.
Yes.
I think it's a bed and breakfast now.
You can go there, yes.
But
yeah.
it's that's kind of creepy just to see it.
I want to go there. Tom Savini lives in Pittsburgh, and the Night of the Living Dead cemetery is there. Right outside of Pittsburgh, I believe, in every year, the movie theater that the original movie The Blob was in, they actually show The Blob, and people actually on purpose, like it's whole thing, they all run out of the theater and they do this whole Blob thing. Yeah, dude. Like I want to go. There's like the mall from Day of the Dead, or from Dawn of the Dead, the original, is still there. And
I think the space I was talking about earlier, that ballroom where Hannibal Lecter was locked up in the cage. I don't know if they do it every year, but they did it last year. Whatever year where there was an anniversary, they might do it every year. They have a dinner, and you eat, and they put the cage in the middle of this ballroom.
I would do that. So I would do that yesterday, dude.
They show the movie. I think they serve fava beans and glasses.
Of course, they have to. They have to make fava beans.
Yeah.
I would do that yesterday, dude. 100%.
I figured you'd like that.
Yeah. Like we went to, like, the Lizzie Borden house is a bed and breakfast.
Cool.
Yeah. I'm going back in December.
Those mashups were really frightening. The dead bodies, because that's real. That's true.
Real. And she got off. She was acquitted.
Yeah. There's a book. I don't know if you've ever read any John Douglas books. So John Douglas is the guy, he worked for, I guess, the FBI, but he was the guy who invented profiling for serial killers. He's the guy that Jack Crawford in Silence of the Lambs is based on. And so he's a real guy. And he wrote all these books, and there's one called The Cases That Haunt Us. And he gives his scientific theory about who is to blame. And he does things like the Jean-Benet Ramsey case, the O.J. Simpson case, but he did Lizzie Borden and the Charles Lindbergh kidnapping. It's really fascinating, because he doesn't say this is unequivocally what happened, but a lot of times it's different than what history has told us, and he's using his system.
Right.
So if you ever saw any of the Hannibal Lecter movies,
Of course I have.
Yeah, so like Thomas Harris, the guy who wrote those books, I guess was up on this idea of profiling serial killers, because in the one that Ray Fiennes was in, where I guess it was Red Dragon, where he has like a speech impediment and it was like a cleft palate. Those are all things that come out of that profile guidebook, where he got so good at this. He's kind of like the also the Edward Norton character in Red Dragon too, where they got so good at putting themselves in the head of serial killers that they drove themselves a little bit crazy. Like it ruined their marriage, and they were good at it, but they had to go to a really dark place to figure out what these people were up to. And whenever they come up where we're looking for a white male between the ages of 24 and 35 who might have a speech impediment, probably lives at home. The reason they know all that is because of this guy, John Douglas. Like he invented that whole way of characterizing criminals. And he's a good writer too, but he makes no bones about the fact that he's ruined his marriage, and he goes to a dark place. He had to stop doing it after a while because he was driving himself a little crazy.
Yeah. Damn.
You probably into those books, though.
I love all that stuff. I find it fascinating what makes crazy people tick. I don't know. I do. I've always been that way.
Yeah.
Damn. Dude, between you interviewing me and me interviewing you, we're going on about 5.5 hours of talking combined.
Yeah, man. I think we did a good job of kind of holding back. Like I tried not to share too many stories during yours,
and me too. I tried also, but this, you know how there's overlap, so it's like it reminds me of something and this and that. So that's always going to happen. Even though I think I did all right this time.
You did great, yeah, man. Well, it's getting late, and I'm sure you've had a long day already. But thanks for having me. And you already did the plugs for your sponsor.
Yeah, man. So now I'm gonna wrap this up, and then I'm gonna come up with something for your intro, something I don't get a copyright infringement for.
Yeah,
because mine, I got a copyright. I didn't drop it yet, but I got a copyright infringement for my intro. Like, damn it! So it's edited for YouTube, so it's just a regular mission statements intro without.
What was yours gonna be?
Well, it was it's already out now because people are watching and listening to this, but it's the open, because it was the moment that I had in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre house and where I was standing. It's when Kirk walks in and stumbles, and then you see Leatherface for the first time, and he raises the mallet and he cracks him, and then he slams the door. You know, so that was my intro, but I got a copyright infringement for Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I'm like, damn it.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be interested to see what you pick for mine.
I have an idea.
Cool.
I have an idea. It goes along with something that you spoke about today in this episode.
Awesome.
I would love to be able to do like something like hip hop related, but I'll definitely get a copyright infringement.
I get it. I love the flyers. I love the intros. They're all great, man. It's great. Yeah. I'm so excited to be a part of this and follow in the footsteps of all of your other guests, because it's inspiring, man. It's like you were kind of talking about this a little bit earlier. It's like you just go to work and you keep your head down, and people don't know that you do all this. And that's kind of how I feel like about Delta Bravo, and also about my hip hop life. It's like kind of like my alter ego, because during the day I'm a mild-mannered reporter, and like then when I'm out and about, I'm always like, all right, this is it. I have to try this. I have to go for it. And sometimes it means staying out later or walking further or whatever, but it's all about finding the good story or having the cool experience. And
100%.
What is it? What's Joe Schellinger say? Other people too, is it collect memories, not things?
Yeah, collect memories, not things.
Yeah, man. I love that.
And give a good day.
Live a good day. Yeah,
be nice to somebody for no reason. Feels good.
Yeah, and strike up a conversation about this stuff, because people I think they surprised themselves because they're ready to give you a hard time, and they're like, no, look, I'm doing this, and this is really cool, and I'm not from around here, and I found this picture, and then they're like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden they shift into a better place. So
Yeah.
it's contagious in a good way, and
it's all positive, dude. Everything that we all do with this whole Delta Bravo thing is nothing but positive.
yeah,
It really is. It's nothing but positive.
agreed. Yeah,
So
it was cool.
I'm not stopping anytime soon.
No.
I'm looking to literally fly one way from New York to somewhere in Cali, and then drive my ass all the way back to Brooklyn across the country.
You'll do it.
I'll do it. I'm setting money aside. I'm mapping things out. I mean, it's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. It's cool to also hear and see all these different people that have a different place in this group. I just saw Tom Jacobs last weekend in New York at MCA Day. He came through with his whole family, and he found me and gave me a handful of Ricky Powell stickers and some new Delta Bravo slaps. Yeah,
the Rickford Institute. Rest in peace, Ricky Powell.
Yeah. So Tom always has like some kind of cool artistic way of helping himself. He does some really cool things. He just went to Delaware for vacation, and while he was there, he posted. He not only did he post pictures of where Biden fell on his bike, but
he landmarked it with a Delta Bravo logo, dude.
Made the whole sign. I guess he called it Brandon Falls.
Yeah, Brandon Falls, and the whole quote, and my foot got stuck in the toe cages or something. Delta Bravo.
Yeah, he made it look like an embossed sign.
And he nailed it to the wooden pole. It's like that we landmarked it. Delta Bravo put the stamp on it. It's hilarious.
There's definitely a piece of all of what we're doing that is art. There's
dude.
I have the same. I've said this before. I have the same feeling when I finish a painting as I do when I'm finishing a mash, especially if there's a lot of legwork or if there's a lot of time investment. It feels very satisfying to share it and to put the logos on it and to make it look nice, like to not just half-ass it, but to really make it into something that's visually appealing.
Right.
So there's composition. There's this idea that Tom has where it's like it's an installation piece.
Yeah.
Leave behind, and someone will tear it down or they'll pull it down, but that's not the point.
That's the point.
He made an artistic statement.
He did.
That was funny and interesting, and it looked like people had already maybe drawn with chalk or something on the.
Probably, but no one thought to make a legitimate sign and put a logo on it, and they put a name, Brandon Falls, stuff. It was clever. It was funny. It's probably gone already. Someone probably ripped it off.
Well,
that's not the point.
Tom does some amazing things. Like
baseball cards
for everybody at MCA Day. He did like lots of one-of-ones. I mean, Joe Schellinger always tells the story about how he made his son a baseball card, which is just I was surprised that they had never met.
Right,
they had never met in person. That just didn't, because I know both of them, and I figured they were friends, and I figured they knew each other.
Yeah, at that time they never met each other. Yeah.
So all of those stories, all of those little overlaps and connections are, to me, like it's just it's like we're getting paid for this.
Yeah. And Joe passed that same exact thing that Butchie did for him forward to me. I had never met Joe.
Yeah.
He mailed me a brick from the pet store from Rocky. I never met him, and he's just like, there's only a couple of them here. I know you would appreciate this. I never met him at that time. You know what I mean? And when I first met him in person was at the All-Star Comic-Con, which Kevin Bednar's Percival Pub and Percival Eats and Ashburn Pub, he put on the All-Star Comic-Con in Virginia, and we went there because Danny Boy was there and C. Thomas Howell was there, and that's where I first met Joe Schellinger for the first time. I went to shake his hand, but before he even shook my hand, he handed me one of the typo Delta Bravo Brooklyn shirts. It's a large. I won't fit in it, but I wouldn't wear it anyway. But it's just like And he just handed that to me. He didn't have to do that. I'm like, dude, thank you. Like nice to meet you. You know what I mean? Like, you're just giving me stuff, but he knows I would appreciate it. I'm a Brooklyn guy. I love Rocky. So he just does these things, give a good day.
Right.
And it made me smile. I'm like, this guy is all right. You know, like this guy is all right. And
no
me and Joe hit it off, and Joe's a great dude.
No doubt. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm glad we got a chance to talk about the other people too, because I think that's what makes it fun. I
Makes
feel
it a team.
It feels good when I'm listening to the podcast and someone shouts me out too. So
Yeah, man.
I love that. And I just love being a part of this. As much as my family like rolls their eyes or like, where are you going? Where are you taking us?
Same here. It's like Nikki. She's like, how come everywhere we go, there's got to be something Delta Bravo? I'm like, I don't know. Why not? Like, who cares?
Yeah.
You know? But then she's the one that drives on this entire road trip. So what are you even talking about? Like, what do you expect? You know? So
man, we've been talking a while. I will
dude.
Wrap it up. Thanks once again. I'm looking forward to listening
anytime
to your show and then mine and then whoever is after this. I'm excited about that too.
I'm not 100% sure who's after this. I have some ideas.
Yeah, I bet.
I have to just put episode numbers. I have like 10 more flyers already made. I just have to put episode numbers because I don't know who's going to be available for what, but I have like 8 or 10 already done and made.
Right.
On ice, waiting.
Awesome.
Yeah, dude.
All right. Thank you, Ferrari. We will talk soon.
Yes. Everybody. Oh, look, Joe Schellinger is, you know what? Here we go real quick. It's funny. Joe Schellinger just texted me. Dude, with 4 exclamation points in capital letters. Awesome ending to Danny Johnson's podcast. Fuck, this is so great. I got goosebumps. And that's when he went on his phone to the Top Gun house.
It was great.
Yeah, dude. Very cool. See, it's like he knows we're talking about him.
Yeah, well, I'm sure he was listening today just like I was.
100%.
Great.
Dude. Follow Andrew on Instagram at AJ Katz Art. And support this guy. Buy some stickers. Buy some stuff. You got some shit going on. And paint that picture from the wire. I want to see it.
I think that sounds good. Yeah.
All right,
brother. All right. Thanks.
Anytime, brother. Be good.
All right. You too.
Later, man.